Recording in progress. Hello, team.
Hello, Ariel.
So it's already 1 p.m. ano? So madami na rin tayo. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Prof. Ipe. So we're already 90 plus, I think 90 plus, ano? Yeah, almost 100 in the meeting room. Pero meron pang papasok later on at saka meron din manonood via a live Facebook streaming, ano? Ayun, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Alright? From where I am, umulan, mainit pero umuulan. Hi, Jonad. Hi, Trustee Rayos. Hi, Carol. Hi, team. Hi, UST,
Hello,
of course.
hello, Ariel.
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Mainit.
Hi, Sir Epe.
Si Jonad, suki niya ng UST kasi nag-guest yan sa UST. Okay. Sige.
May utang ako kay Sir Epe, kaya ako niya tatakip ng mukha.
Ang mga utang dapat bayaran.
Isingilin kita.
O sige, bago natin simulan ng ating palatuntunan, di ba? Palatuntunan talaga, Joyce, sa ating programa ngayon. And thanks very much, UST. This is for NCR, ano? This is our 10th leg, Joyce, for NCR in cooperation or partnership with the University of Santo Tomas. Maraming salamat, Prof. Ipe, for coordinating everything, di ba? Tsaka maraming salamat sa mga estudyante dito, at mga guro din. And I'm sure, Prof. Ipe, meron ding hindi galing sa UST, no? Kasi na-publicize naman natin to. So kung sino po nasa ibang eskwelahan outside of UST, you're very much welcome. And thank you very much for joining us today. At umpisahan po natin to with some prayers as usual. Let's put ourselves in the presence of God and in the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty Father, we thank you for another opportunity to gather ourselves once again to talk about important things on media and the public. Kami po ay mananalangin lagi sa aming kaligtasan amid this pandemic. Lord God, please give us faith and confidence and antibay ng loob para po magampanan namin aming trabaho bilang mamamahayag, bilang educators, bilang estudyante at bilang isang mamayan ng Pilipinas. Kami po ay patuloy din mananalangin para sa yung ibang tao na may sakit ngayon at merong pinagdadaanan sa buhay. Sana po ay bigyan sila ng redemption and salvation. This we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen. And then the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good afternoon! Good afternoon. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Thanks very much. Magandang hapon, team. Magandang hapon, PPI board. Magandang hapon, members ng PPI din. Siyempre, nag-observe din sila sa ating programa ngayon. Maraming salamat ulit sa Seidel Foundation. Palakpakat naman dyan para sa malaking suporta sa lahat ng mga ginagawa ng PPI sa loob ng pandemya. At bago pa ng pandemic, ang dami-dami namin ginagawa na. And we thank you for that. And we are looking forward to more activities next year. At kami po ay napapasalamat dahil ang Scholastic Press Outreach Program ng PPI is actually an outreach program, an extension program of the Philippine Press Institute for the academics or for the academe. Kaya marami po sa inyo ngayon ang mga estudyante at mga educators and dito po sumali sa ating programa ngayon. At we're not shutting our doors to other sectors. Pwede din pa yung kasi well-publicized naman ito. You can always register. And speaking of activities, Joyce, ang dami natin ginagawa every month. Isa na po ito yung Scholastic Press Outreach Program. We just finished Universidad de Manila and then UST, and then at the end of then hopefully you're going to Cotabato talaga in small boxes pa rin.
Virtually.
Yeah. Pero brace yourself, pero na kaming for the members who are watching us right now, magkakaroon na tayo ng face-to-face Jonad ng hybrid, and we are going to start with turf ni Trustee Rayos, our trustee for Luzon, one of our two trustees for Luzon, Trustee Jonald Rayos. That's going to be in June. Ayun. But bago yan, meron kaming weekly, we have a podcast with a roundtable discussion. A roundtable discussion namin o RTD with PPI, ang tawag doon, falls every third Wednesday of the month. Tapos, ang Scholastic usually Friday of the third Friday of the month. Our podcast is a week after. Ang podcast namin, tinitape siya or recorded pero premiered as live. Well, medyo may contradiction na, but we make sure na we premiere it for audiences locally and abroad via our podcast. Ayun, Joyce. Dami namin pag-uusapan yung hitik na hitik ng ating programa ngayon, but we'll make sure that we are going to get out of the meeting learned, not only because we have experts, we have journalists, we have academics, journalism educators as resource persons, but because it's something close to your heart. marahil madami sa inyo, a lot of you are taking up or are communication journalism majors. So medyo feel nyo ng realidad, di ba? So natapos ng eleksyon natin, pero pag-uusapan pa rin natin ang mga media conditions or challenges na kinakaharap ng ating kasama sa industriya, Joyce, whether ma-print ka, may mapa-broadcast, di ba, ma-online or freelance ka ba, lahat po yan ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon. At ano bang kinakaharap ng ating media sa bagong administrasyon? At
of course, Ariel, Uste was the host of the
yes.
counting.
Yeah. Ay, congratulations UST for housing. Diba? Our magigiting na tagabantay, Joyce, if I may call them.
Congratulations for housing my team.
Yeah, oo. Yeah, team nila Joyce. Ano, na ating
mga araw doon.
Oo, kaya walang mga maleta ang tawag ni Joyce, hindi i-bag.
Ay maleta kami ngayon, hindi lang i-bags.
Pero saludo tayo, no, not only sa UST for really embracing our, nung andun nating mga kasamahan at yung nagbabantay ng ating mga boto, Joyce, ano. Pero I think sa lahat ng mga estudyante din na naging Joyce, nagmatyag at nagparticipate sa ating halalan. Importante po yung the youth, the voice of the youth. At having said about media conditions, Joyce, I don't want to go ahead of the discussions, pero sabi nga natin pre-pandemic ang dami na nating problema, no. Whether ito ay naibsan or nadagdagan, that's another matter. Pero the discussions and conversations should be going on and on. Meron mang solusyon ngayon at hand or bukas, kailangan patuloy tayong mag-uusap about ourselves, as communicators, as journalists, as media practitioners, kasi mahalaga po tayo sa isang demokrasya katulad ng Pilipinas. Ayun, tatawagin ko ang aming trustee for Luzon and also publisher of a multi-awarded community newspaper based in Batangas. Please welcome Jonald Rayos. Good afternoon, Jonald.
Good afternoon. Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Midya at Pandemya o Midya sa gitna ng pandemya. Una ang ating pagbati sa lahat ng tumugon sa ating paanyaya para sa isa na namang napapanahong panayam ukol sa ating buhay bilang mga mamamahayag, bilang mga mag-aaral na nais maging mamamahayag at bilang mga mamamayan. Sa hanay ng mga talakay ngayong hapon, hangad natin na makatulong ito, lalo na sa mga kasamahan natin na mga naghahangad na kasama natin sa isang noble na vocation na meron tayo, ang journalism. Siyempre pa, ang ating taus-pusong pasasalamat sa Seidel Foundation sa patuloy na pakikipagtuwang sa Philippine Press Institute at siyempre pa ang ating mga partners from the academe para maipagpatuloy ang mga gawaing katulad nito. So, sa ating mga participants ngayong hapon, welcome and enjoy listening pa sa ating mga panel of speakers at sana ay tulad ng nabanggit ko, makatulong ito sa ating lahat sa ating patuloy na pakikibaka sa gitna ng pandemya. Ulit, magandang hapon.
Magandang hapon and thank you very much, Trustee Rayos. And sabi nga ng aming trustee for the Luzon, for Luzon, sana merong kapulutong aral kasi ito din ay magiging sandata natin sa anumang hamon sa buhay. At saka marireinforce yung learnings nila, Joyce, yung lessons na tinuturo ng mga professors nila, katulad ni Sir Epe, who himself is also a journalist, and other speakers as well. All right. Like ko nakakalimutan, Joyce. My name is Ariel Sabilina. I'm the Executive Director and Trustee of the Philippine Press Institute. Kasi hindi naman mahalagang pakilala sa sarili ko, pero just the same kasi pinakilala ko ng iba. Joining me is the team of the PPI, of course, headed by Seminar Director Joyce Pañares, also news editor of Manila Standard. Our admin, Ate Bes, sila Sheila, sila Rog, si Risa, si Priscilla, si Kier. At yun, nabanggit ko na lahat. Maraming salamat po for mounting this production. We call it the production always. Ayun, at this point, binanggit ko na yung Seidel Foundation. Hindi namin magagawa to without the help and generosity of Seidel Foundation. Please welcome to represent or to, on behalf of its resident representative of the Philippines, Attorney Gus Heineke. Here is the program coordinator. And find I got it right. Sabi ni Carol, hindi tama naman siya, di bali na yung mga posisyon niya, mas importante Seidel Foundation. One of the program coordinators of Seidel Foundation, please welcome a very good friend, Caroline Lee. Hi, Carol. Good afternoon to you.
Hello. Good afternoon, Ariel.
the very dynamic Ariel Sabelino, Executive Director of PPI, who it's hard to imagine who would not recognize you, but yes, thank you very much, Ariel. And of course, I'm here to give a short message on behalf of our resident representative, Mr. Götz Heinecke. He would have loved to be with us. He sends his regards to everyone. And of course, I'll give a short introduction on the Seidel Foundation. We are a German non-government organization that's based in Germany and has been working with local organizations here for, I think, 40 years already by now, and in various projects and programs. And of course, we're really happy to be working with the Philippine Press Institute on various activities. You might have had the chance to watch these as they were being played before we actually started. And of course, Ariel also mentioned them. So just keep tabs on our website and social media sites to have an idea about these. And mainly, the Seidel Foundation works in development cooperation to build up democracy and good governance. And that is, of course, already key as to why we are working closely with the media, with specifically the Philippine Press Institute, in making these activities possible. And of course, we are very thankful to you, Ariel, and the team, and to Ms. Joyce Pañares, and of course, other collaborators, other people and organizations that we work with. For example, for this activity, I understand we got a lot of help from Professor Felipe Salvosa II. So thank you very much. And of course, the UST Faculty of Arts and Letters Journalism Society. This activity is also extra special for me in the sense that the UST is also my alma mater.
Yeah,
so,
tama. UST ka pala, Carol. Tama.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So it really feels good to be in touch with your school again. Thank you very much. Of course, a good afternoon also to the PPI trustee, Jonah Medina Rayos, and the president of the UST Journalism Society, Marimon Reyes. And so for today, we will be having the 10th, Ariel?
10th, yes.
The 10th session of the Midya at Pandemya, coping with and covering the health crisis. So our esteemed lineup of speakers will be talking about what the challenges are that the media practitioners are facing when covering news amidst a critical situation such as the pandemic. And in particular, we will get insights through the lens. I say that is such a nice phrase of journalists who is covering the news. And this will be through research work. I believe it's on its way to be wrapping up, and of course through a journalist herself. And in addition to that, we'll have more information about what a citizen journalist is and why is it important. Why are having citizen journalists important? What citizen journalism is and why this is important. And last but not least, especially nowadays where we have so much content online and offline, but most especially online, we will have a speaker sharing tips and tools on checking content, on how to consume content. So nowadays, what is in demand is attention. Everybody's out to grab your attention. So you have to be we have to learn to be very discerning about where we give our attention to. And with that being said, let me end there. Please remember, of course, to like the Facebook pages of the Philippine Press Institute and of the Seidel Foundation. And sometime as we wrap up this activity today, there will be a link to an online survey where you can share your comments as to how you found this activity, whether you liked it, and then what you might want to expect more in the future. So please share your feedback, your comments in this survey. Please participate so as to help us be able to come up with more of such activities in the future. So enjoy a fruitful discussion this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl, for joining us today. Thanks, Hansel Foundation. And hi to Attorney Gus. For more details of our programs will be posted on both PPI FB page and also page of Seidel Foundation, because they also have their own activities. So please stay tuned for other activities via Facebook page, kasi doon namin pinopost or na-announce yung mga activities namin. Ayun, salamat, Carol. Yun nga, we're expecting a lot of learnings and lessons from this program today. Wag nating patagalin pa, but let me just call the president of the UST Journalism Society. Please welcome Marymon Reyes for her remarks. Hi, Marymon. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon po. Pasensya na po for the loud background. I'm actually covering din po ang PPCRB as of this moment.
Saludo tayo. Saludo. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you very much po. So to the Philippine Press Institute, in cooperation with the journals from the UST Faculty of Arts and Letters, Journalism Society, under the auspices of the Seidel Foundation Philippines, to our esteemed guests from partner schools and media organizations, faculty and staff, and to all who joined us this day despite the challenging social and political climate, a blessed and powerful afternoon. It has been 2 years since the first lockdown happened to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19. Our normal lives were put into a hold, with each passing day turning into a game of luck, whether or not we will be catching the virus. Seeing our friends and relatives became more of a challenge, and surviving became top priority. Amid these circumstances, the need to remain vigilant by being updated with the news also became demanding. Hence, we are now calling the help and aid of the press or media. Among medical or healthcare workers, journalists and reporters are also standing on the front lines, facing coronavirus while also committing to reach information so as to calm the growing anxiousness of the public and to provide them with the needed knowledge to prepare for what is to come. Carrying this responsibility continued for days, weeks, months until this year, and with this, the questions pop into mind. How are they doing this far? How are they coping? And how has this health crisis changed the game for journalism and reportage? On this very day, we are to understand the world of media during the pandemic, as well as to better grasp the ins and outs of being a journalist during one. Through this series of forums and talks, we are to see clearer the challenges faced, how to conquer them, and how the media changed over the time. We know the pandemic is yet to be over, and along other obstacles around society, there are more to come. Since journalism is the first rough draft of history, according to Philip Graham, the co-owner of the Washington Post, we must be keen and quick on our feet so that we could pursue our roles the best we could. And with this, I welcome you all to Midya at Pandemya, Coping with and Covering the Health Crisis, a scholastic program for educators and students. And on behalf of the UST Journalism Society, I would like to extend as early as now our sincere gratitude for giving us this opportunity to learn. May we use this day to better ourselves and to appreciate more the integrity of journalism that is now standing against all odds. Once again, welcome everyone, and may we enjoy and learn this day. Thank you po.
Ayan. Fantastic remarks you got there, Marymon. Maraming salamat for joining us today, and thank you to your organization and to UST as well for collaborating with PPI. She actually set the tone of the seminar, Joyce, diba? Yan, fantastic and very insightful. Thanks very much for that also inspiring message. And it's a challenge for all of us, not just for students, but for journalists and media practitioners in general. And now to kick off our program, to start our discussions, let me just call our PPI Seminar Director and News Editor of Manila Standard. Hi, Joyce. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ariel. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all our
Ang lakas ng energy natin ngayon, ha?
Oo nga, nakabawi na tayo because the last time
nakatulog na.
Nakatulog na.
Oo.
Nag-sink in na. Pero ayan. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng ating participants sa UST for partnering with us today sa Seidel Foundation. Everybody else na na-mention na rin kanina ni Ariel. As he said, I'm Joyce Pañares. I'm Seminar Director of the Philippine Press Institute. At excited ako dito sa discussion natin kasi as Ariel said, medyo naka-recover na kami, may energy na ulit. And I'm also wondering, because we're discussing media at pandemya, paano rin kaya yung mga estudyante na nag-aaral ng journalism, broadcom, under a pandemic, I'm sure nag-iba rin yung kanilang dynamics. Makaka-relate sila dun din sa mga concerns natin. Diba kung tayo concerned natin, paano ang press con via Zoom, sila din siguro, paano mo ituturo ang journalism na via Zoom. Kasi naalala ko noon, nung estudyante tayo, pinapalabas. Takbo ka sa presinto, takbo ka sa korte, cover ka ng ganitong rally, cover ka ng SONA. How do you even do that now? Lahat ng coverage ngayon, online. Diba? Even the UST trainees sa dyaryo namin the past 2 years, puro online lang. Nawawala yung mentoring na one-on-one kasi hindi mo sila makita and etc. So I guess yung concerns natin, yung iba doon, parallel concerns din ng mga estudyante. So I really hope you learn a lot today. And please, wag mahiyang magtanong. Medyo may iba lang yung sequence ngayon in the sense that the Q&A will be after all the speakers. So I'm begging the indulgence of Ipe and Rides to stay on because si Weng has to attend to a post-mortem ABS-CBN coverage of elections, no? So right now, so I already mentioned his name. I'd like to call our first speaker, UST's own, di ba? Pride and Joy. Ang Vice President of JSAP and the Journalism Program Head of the University of Santo Tomas, Professor Felipe Salvosa II, to discuss reporting in the time of a new normal, journalism amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Hello, Prof. Ipe.
Hello, Joyce.
Nakakatakot ba kapag tao mo yung kaharap mo? Are you among friends or what?
I hope. No, these are my students, no. And
pero I think, Prof, this is something new that you're going to hear this time, kasi this is a study, di ba, ongoing. So, hindi pa nila medyo something fresh, no, parang gano'n. No?
Mostly my students here are from the course Journalism Principles and Practices. So, tamang-tama, no? So, maraming salamat sa Philippine Press Institute for giving me this opportunity to talk a little bit about our research, even if hindi pa talaga siya tapos. Initial findings pa lamang. Salamat din sa Seidel Foundation, no? So, for the support. To our seminar director, Joyce Pañares, na kasampung beses natin ginagawa to, pero she always manages to have a new take on what we are discussing. And also dun sa mga kasama natin, lalo na si Rides, na na-interview natin yan, kasama yan sa mga respondents natin. And then, kay Merrimon sa UST Journalism Society for helping co-organize this event. We had an open invitation for all our partner schools. No, I cannot mention all of them right now, but just to mention two, we invited URS Angono and CVSU. No, kasi yan yung talagang mga partner schools natin. And also tumambueng paraan sa walang sawa niyang pagtuturo ng citizen journalism. No, maraming salamat. So as mentioned by Joyce, my task today is to talk about our study. No, this is about how COVID-19 has affected journalism. No, so this study is being undertaken as part of global network of journalism educators and researchers called the Global Risk Journalism Hub. So we are 60 researchers from 8 regions around the world. I belong to the Southeast Asia Regional Group. Kasama natin dito si Christian Esguerra, no? Siya rin ang kasama natin sa fieldwork. And then we also have researchers from Malaysia, Thailand, India, and Nepal, no? And the data is being shared with you through the kindness of our regional group leader, Dr. Sarah Chinasamy of Malaysia, no, a communications and political analyst in Malaysia. So itong study nito is two-track. No? So in the first quarter of last year, we rolled out globally a snapshot survey. No? So although purposive ang sampling nito, meaning to say hindi talaga siya strictly generalizable, we wanted to have baseline data on how COVID impacted the practice of journalism. No? So we are going to present the regional results today, no, for the Southeast Asia region. And meron din tayong mga comparisons with the global results. But of course, the focus will really be on the Philippine results. No? And then the second track of the study is a qualitative one. No, so we have been doing qualitative interviews, no, key informant interviews. In the first quarter, spilling over until now, medyo naapektuhan lang ng election cycle, but we are hoping to wrap up the interviews very soon. So we have initial findings lang dun sa mga nauna nating interviews, kumbaga patikim, no. So, okay, dun sa snapshot survey, what we wanted to do was to find out, to look into the challenges faced by journalism covering the pandemic, no, the role of this information amid the pandemic, no, para dun sa mga researchers sa Global Risk Journalism Hub, they wanted to look at this information, you know, and rightly so, no. And then we wanted to look at how the journalists viewed the different sources of information about COVID-19 and the different pressures faced by journalists in covering the pandemic. No? So this is just a breakdown of respondents. No? For the region, we had 175 respondents. This is a quarter of the global respondents, 744. Kung sa Pilipinas, we had 32 respondents for the snapshot survey. Okay. Okay, in the region, we had 63% of respondents were male, 37% were female, and this is because of the overwhelmingly male sample from India. No? Karamihan sa mga journalists na na-interview sa India, puro lalaki. Okay. Now, we asked also our respondents, no, kung ano ang kanilang primary coverage area. No? So out of the 170 plus respondents, 84 were covering national beats, followed by local or regional beats, no? 38 and 34 respectively. We also asked them, no, kung saan napapublish yung kanilang mga gawa. No? And pinakamalaking proportion would be internet, online, and digital platforms, no, particularly web portals, aggregators, blogs, websites, social media. Ngayon sa legacy media, individually, mas maliit sila, no, pero pag pinagsama-sama mo, malaki pa din. No? So print media 25%, TV 21%, radio 6%, others 7%. No? Pero pinakamalaking proportion, no, yung mga online or internet platforms. Okay, more than half of the regional respondents are reporters. No? So 52% consider themselves as journalists and reporters. A fifth were editors, no, and a few were from management and other roles within their organizations. Okay, we wanted to know kung nakatutok pa sila sa COVID, and we found out that 9 out of 10 wrote stories about COVID, so they're really competent to answer the survey. Okay, we asked them if they felt their reporting assignments were challenging overall during the COVID-19 pandemic. No, siguro baka yung iba sa inyo baka isipin no-brainer naman yung tanong na yan, but we wanted to look at their degree of agreement to the question. Ano? And 37% said they strongly agreed. 42% agreed. No, if you combine them, 8 out of 10 reporters felt that the coverage was challenging. Meron namang nagsabi na they neither agreed nor disagreed, and then meron namang 4% na nagsabi na hindi. No, it's not challenging. Okay, yung sagot na yan, it closely parallels the responses to the question of whether they felt personally exposed to COVID-19, and 7 out of 10 ang nagsabi na yes. This was last year, remember? Last year ito. No, so pag pinagsama natin yung strongly agree and agree answers, no? Almost 7 out of 10 ang nagsabi na they felt exposed to COVID. Halos ganoon din yung proportion na nagsabi na they knew of at least one colleague was contracted the virus. Okay? So I would imagine mas malaki na to ngayon, but at 76%, no? Almost 8 out of 10 na nagsabi na may kilala silang isang na colleague, no, sa industriya na nagkaroon ng COVID. Okay. We asked them if their organization or kung freelancer sila, yung client nila, provided them important health protection equipment. No? We found out from our respondents na not even half were given protective gear. Okay, and this is something we need to validate in the qualitative responses. No, I suspect that this really has to do with the size of the news organization. Ano, kasi there's a tendency na kung malaki ka, meron kang TV broadcast component, no, mas maraming resources and therefore mas merong protective gear. Pero yung ibang mga mas maliliit na operation, mukhang hindi ganon ang sitwasyon. Okay? So 47% lamang ang may protective gear. No? Okay? And then yung mga yung iba naman ay iba't ibang sagot. So merong don't know, no answer, strongly disagree, or neither agree nor disagree. 17% actually yung regional response. Okay, doon naman tayo sa area ng disinformation. We wanted to ask kung they understood the concept of disinformation, and then the answer was 9 out of 10. No? Pag pinagsama mo yung agree and strongly agree answers, nearly 9 out of 10 said that they have a good understanding of what disinformation is. Okay, and then 6 out of 10 ang nagsabi na yung kanilang media organization may guidelines on how to identify disinformation. We wanted to know kung merong internal policies, no, on disinformation. At 6 out of 10, hindi lahat, no? Pero 6 out of 10 ang nagsabi na meron silang guidelines versus disinformation. Okay, more than half naman ang nagsabi, no, na they have received training on handling disinformation. This is online with the global response, no, which is 53%. No? So, majority ang nagsabi na meron silang training. This goes to show na hindi lahat ng major organizations ay may formal training on how to handle disinformation. Okay, tinanong namin if they thought that this information was affecting how they covered the pandemic, no? Whether sila personally or their fellow journalists. If we combine the agree and strongly agree answers, lumalabas dito mas malaki yung sa Pilipinas. No? 88% ang nagsabi na this information has been affecting their coverage. No? Followed by Thailand and Malaysia, no, 77%. Mataas din sa Malaysia, 77%. According to our Malaysian colleague, talagang maraming fake news din sa Malaysia na naka-apekto sa the way the news is being received or delivered. Okay. We also asked them if their news organizations have been associated with producing this information during this pandemic period. No? And only 17% ang nagsabi na agree, no? Or strongly agree. So ibig sabihin na walang masyadong problema sa credibility ng kanilang mga news organizations. Perhaps because of the policies or training that was put in place, no, to handle this information. Okay, we found that there was heavy dependence on government information. This was really more pronounced in the Philippines compared with the other countries. So 91%, no, ang strongly agree or agree doon sa statement na yun, followed by India and then Malaysia. No? So this has implications, no, dun sa the kind of information that we get if the main source of information is the government. Okay, we asked them if they have not been restricted from covering any aspect of the pandemic. No? So for this chart, we plotted yung mga disagree and strongly disagree, no, answers, no. So lumilitaw dito na merong somehow merong restrictions, okay, doon sa pandemic coverage, no? And we have seen at the beginning of the pandemic, no, nagkaroon ng order, no, um, to issue for journalists to obtain accreditation. Later on, sa Bayanihan Law, nagkaroon ng provision on disinformation, ano. And then later on, nagkaroon ng mga vaccination, RT-PCR, and more recently, mga antigen test requirements. Okay, we asked our respondents, no, whether they trusted the health experts, no. And when it came to the health experts, no, we found very high trust, no. 9 out of 10 journalists said they trusted the health experts, no. While sa WHO naman, mataas din, 7 out of 10. Although as we have been saying in this webinar series, we don't want to make a lot of inferences over this difference kasi hindi naman talaga siya, our sampling is purposive, no? So we don't really want to make much out of that difference. What we would like to say is that in both health experts and the WHO, malaki yung trust na binigay ng mga journalists, no, in our sample, the regional journalists. Okay. There we also found high dependence on press releases over social media and scientific journals. Mas malaki yung response when it came to press releases. Pagdating naman sa social media and scientific journals, about half. No? Perhaps sa social media because of the need to verify. There's a lot of disinformation on social media, which can sometimes be difficult to verify. The scientific journals naman, perhaps the access issues, no, or the need to digest, no, to distill, understand the data found in scientific journals. No. Only about half of journalists, no, said they were getting information from scientific journals. So 1 out of 2. Okay. Mas mataas yung preference for international media, no? 7 out of 10 journalists in our regional sample ang nagsabi na they depend on international media, no, for news about COVID-19. Okay, we asked them whether they interviewed marginalized sources, no, because we wanted to know if there were efforts to try to balance the coverage. And we found the response to this question, no, is highest in the Philippines, no, among the countries in our regional group, 66%. No, almost 7 out of 10 ang nag-i-interview sa mga marginalized sources. No. Sumunod dyan would be India, no, and then Thailand. Okay, and we have seen this, no, in the news coverage of the pandemic, no. Merong mga stories na lumabas, no, for example sa ABS-CBN about yung mga taong naapektuhan ng mga mobility restrictions, no. And the health frontline workers na naapektuhan ng discrimination early on in the pandemic. Okay, we asked them if they have experienced pressure to publish information about the pandemic from the government. Okay. And we found that the majority of journalists in India, Philippines, and Thailand say there's no government pressure to publish information. Okay, so Pilipinas actually 84% nagsabi wala. Pero may 13% na nagsabi, no? And then we can see from this chart na hindi uniform yung experience across countries. For example, sa Malaysia, pantay yung nagsabi ng yes and no. Sa India naman, 65% said no, but 1/3 of them said yes. Okay? So that means na there is subtle pressure, no? But not all journalists, no, have the same experiences. Okay. We asked them whether they feared that their news organization was going to experience financial difficulties because of the pandemic. This answer for the whole region is in line with the global response. No? 6 out of 10 journalists feared, no, that their organizations will experience financial stress. Again, combination of agree and strongly agree responses. Okay. Pinakamalaki yung fear na yon sa Pilipinas, no? At 81% of Filipino respondents, no? Followed by Thailand and India, no? So this is validated by the experience of the PPI members early on in the pandemic, no? Noong unang taon ng pandemya, nakita natin na maraming nangyaring mga scaling down or of operations, or kung hindi man nag-scale down or nag-lay off, no, totally nagsara, no? So and this is reflected in the survey responses. So what have we found in our snapshot survey conducted last year? We found that most journalists viewed COVID-19 news coverage as challenging, as they felt exposed to the pandemic and knew of at least one colleague who was infected. Only 47% were given protective gear. We found high understanding of what this information is, and most journalists believe that this information is affecting news coverage, although their news organizations are not likely associated with spreading disinformation. We found high dependence on government information and press releases, and high trust in health experts and the WHO. Okay. We also found that majority of journalists, especially in the Philippines, tried to balance coverage by interviewing marginalized voices. Okay. When it came to government pressure, there is some evidence, no, of government pressure in some countries. Okay. Iba-iba ang magnitude. Okay. When it came to the financial situation of news organizations, we found that majority of journalists feared that their news organizations would experience financial difficulties. Okay. As I said earlier, the second track of the study involves qualitative interviews, no, and we aim to wrap up in-depth interviews with at least 30 journalists, no, who report on COVID-19 using the different platforms, no. So our selection will be purposive. Okay. We will deliberately interview news organizations, no, that deliver news on COVID-19 using an interview guide developed by the Global Risk Journalism Hub. Okay, so in selecting our qualitative interviews, we will ensure representation in Metro Manila, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao across platforms, print, online, TV, radio. We will also ensure gender representation as required by the ethics review board that reviewed our methodology. Okay, so once we have wrapped up, we think we'll be able to wrap up our interviews very soon. After that, we will do a thematic analysis, no, and we will draw that from the transcriptions of the interviews, no, and as you all know, no, yung iba sa inyo nag-research methodology na. Sa thematic analysis, we will come up, no, with broad themes, no, which will be the backbone of the narrative. Okay. Now, sabi ko kanina, meron na kaming mga initial interviews, no, and I'd like to share some of the insights that we drew from the initial interviews. No. We asked the journalists what they thought were the key issues of the pandemic. No. So, karamihan sa kanila really thought that the government response was poor. Okay? And kung ganun yung insight nila, no, somehow meron yung makikita mo yon sa kanilang news coverage. Okay? Isang malaking issue din para sa kanila yung kahirapan na naging dulot ng mobility restrictions. Okay? Concerned sila doon. They were also very critical about the slow vaccination rollout. Okay? So yan yung directly connected with the COVID-19. Doon naman sa profession, many of them brought up the difficulty of virtual news conferences. Okay? Kasi nga, ang hirap mag-follow up, ang hirap mag-clarify. There's limited time. There's a lot of people in the Zoom room, and it's easy for journalists to be cut off when they ask questions or follow-ups, no, if their question is read at all. Okay? And then, when at least in the initial interviews that we conducted, no, yung costs involved when COVID RT-PCR testing is required, no, kung iyon ay hindi sagot ng office, no, they just decide not to cover anymore. They will cover, mean to say they will not cover in person. They would rather do virtual coverage rather than spend for testing if it's not going to be paid for by the company. Okay. We asked them if their coverage has been becoming, whether the coverage is becoming global in scope. No, they admitted that coverage is still mostly focused on local angles because of the demand of the local audiences, but the global aspect of the coverage is connected with the vaccine rollout. No? So that is something that we will report to the global network. Okay. Okay, the factors that shape the crisis narrative, we confirmed yung kanilang heavy dependence on the government sources, particularly IATF. No? We asked them what kind of research they were doing. Admittedly, karamihan sa kanila ay hindi nagkakaroon ng malalim na pag-research dahil sa kakulangan ng oras. No? But the main research tool has been Google. No? Google searches. Okay. We found a very high level of misinformation and fake news based on our interviews, no, and this was especially regarding vaccines, no. Some of them mentioned yung alternative treatments, no, na hindi inaprubahan ng mga otoridad, kagaya ng ivermectin. Marami daw disinformation doon sa drug na yon na hindi recommended ng authorities. Okay, we asked them about what they thought were the most trustworthy and the least trustworthy sources. Yan ang tanong namin eh. So we found that there's more trust on health experts, no, than on politicians, no. Actually, nabanggit ko yung pangalan ng Pangulo dito, no. Mas nagtitiwala daw sila sa mga health experts rather than on the politicians and political appointees and even the military people overseeing the health response. So health experts, whether they come from the DOH or yung mga outsiders na experts sa epidemiology or health statistics, no, or vaccines. Okay, when it came to risks posed by the COVID coverage, ito yung mga lumabas sa interviews namin. Yung workload daw ay naging mas mabigat, no? Particularly because of the Zoom coverages that they need to attend, utos ng desk, no? Perhaps, no, I get the sense that the news desks are somewhat compensating for the lack of field work or the inability to do field work. Kaya ang daming mga Zoom news coverages na kailangan puntahan ng mga journalists, no? Yung iba sabi 5, minsan 5 sa isang araw. Okay. And that's the reason for the heavier workload. May takot pa rin sa COVID, no? Even if yung nag-interview na kami, medyo wala kasing walang surge, no? So despite that, may takot pa rin na makakuha ng COVID at makapag-uwi nito sa bahay at makahawa ng mga kasama sa bahay. Okay. We also found that some journalists were getting used to working from home, no? Na they felt that they're able to do their work from home despite all of these limitations and restrictions, no? But they are willing to go out for major news coverages. We finally, I don't want to generalize across all journalists, no? Kasi we detected difference between city and provincial journalists. Yung mga city journalists sanay sa Zoom news coverage. Yun namang mga nasa provincial areas, no, they still express preference for in-person interviews and news coverages, no. You know, yung isa sa mga na-interview natin is Rice Barsha from who is a correspondent for a number of publications including Rappler. She has more insight on this, no. So I will leave it here, no. Maraming salamat sa oras na binigay niyo sa akin. And I hope may napulot tayo, no? I hope this does not discourage you from pursuing a journalistic career. let's use these as insights, no? Para malaman kung ano yung klaseng sitwasyon na papasukin natin kapag tayo ay naging miyembro na ng profesyon na ito at how we can deal with these challenges. No? Thank you. Back to you, Joyce.
Thank you, Prof. Ipe. So madaming items din sa study that were raised. Actually excited kaming lahat to see the complete study because as Prof. Ipe said, they're now on the qualitative track after the quantitative aspect of the survey. Siguro kung in a snapshot, pwede mo siyang hati-hatiin sa ano yung challenges sa news gathering and production, challenges sa news delivery, tapos ano yung solution na nakita ng mga journalists natin. So sa news gathering and production side, andun ang lack of protective gear, yung sariling fear ninyo of contracting COVID, restriction sa pandemic coverage, required ka ng antigen test, sometimes hindi pa sinasabi sa'yo na kailangan pala ng antigen, magkakabiglaan na lang, hindi ready yung ilong mo. There was also financial stress, di ba? Kasi
tutusukin pala yung ilong mo, hindi sinasabi.
Oo, hindi ka handa. Dapat pinaghahandaan kasi yun. Dahil medyo masakit siya talaga masakit at nakakaiyak. There was also the issue on financial stress and nakita natin ito. There were a lot of newspapers during the pandemic, especially during the first 6 months, that either folded up or limited their operations, limited their circulation, or shifted to purely online. We even experienced that, I think, for 2 weeks, we had to stop printing because of the lockdowns. Ang hirap ilabas ng dyaryo sa Manila. Tapos ang hirap mag-angkat ng papel para doon sa plates natin. There was, Prof. Ipe mentioned heavier workload and difficulties in virtual news conferences. Later on, as he said, Rides would be discussing also a bit on this, Pero totoo yun. Imagine kung kayo ng estudyante, baka may gusto kang itanong, pero hindi ka natatawag sa Zoom. Mas ganun din sa reporter. Same experience that we all are experiencing in these small boxes right now. Sa news delivery aspect naman, there was the proliferation of disinformation and misinformation na kumakalaban doon sa dinideliver natin na balita. So it's not as if it's not enough, all the challenges of production. Meron pang ganong aspeto na we are actually being challenged as journalists by people who proliferate or who peddle fake, although we don't like the term fake news, who peddle misinformation and disinformation. But the bright side of this, di ba, kasi baka masyadong gloomy yung outlook, nakita natin na in terms of solution, there was real effort at mataas sa Pilipinas yung effort to try and balance the coverage to get, marginalized sources to complete the story. Despite the heavy reliance on official sources, on press releases, etc. May ganoong effort pa rin. So thank you, Prof. Ipe. Please wait until the Q&A later after kay Ms. Weng. Please, just one additional session for us. And as Prof. Ipe said, we have today a community journalist na talaga namang, paano ba natin to, survivor, nag-flourish despite and in spite of the pandemic. I'd like to call Ms. Rides Barsha, and she will be discussing community media challenges through a journalist lens. Hi, Rides. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Hansen, Seidel, Prof. Ipe, Joyce, and everyone in the room. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Ano yan sa Joyce Rides? Journalist for all seasons.
Yes. Baka napatunayan ko yan kahit anong oras kumakain.
Bumagyo, ano pa ba? Bumagyo, merong ano man ng, di ba?
Oo. Pag may sakuna, tumatakbo siya palapit dun sa
may gera,
ano
man.
Na bagyo. Go ahead, Rides, please.
Yeah, Kambal, magandang hapon. Akala ko umalis ka na.
Mamaya pa 3 o'clock, oo.
Okay.
Magandang hapon sa'yo.
Magandang hapon. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. I'm based in Legazpi. Pilo-Oste. Oste din ako ng Legazpi. So magandang hapon. I'm going to discuss about our experience from the ground in the region as a journalist. I'm going to discuss about our experiences in the region, covering disaster and in the middle of the pandemic, the impact of ABS-CBN and Sagisit News FM closure among of us sa local. Yun, going beyond the comfort zone. Kasi di ba karamihan sa atin ng pandemic, nasa ano lang tayo, nasa bahay lang. Pero yung mga community journalists ay nasa labas. So hindi sa amin uso yung kahit tayo mayroong mga hybrid session, but lagi pa rin po kami sa labas kasi nandun ang balita. And coping up with the new normal coverage during the pandemic and disaster. Okay, here. What are our experiences during the hardest lockdown? First, heto po yung pinaka-problema ng mga mamamayag, yung walang sariling sasakyan. Ang hirap-hirap po mag-commute at that time kasi nga ang mahal ng transportation at wala kang masasakyan. So, ang iba nagre-resort na lang to ask permission or assistance from your relatives na pwedeng maihatid ka kung saan ka mag-cover o kaya kaming magkakatrabaho, nagsasama-sama sa isang sasakyan, makarating lang sa area na pupuntahan for our coverage, lalo na po nung nasa typhoon. Kasi ang Bicol, lalo na po ang Albay, nagkaroon kami ng 3 consecutive stronger typhoons during the hardest lockdown. So, ang hirap at the time kasi nasa lockdown, so we are following the strict protocol na ini-implement ng EITF. Pero we have to follow the strict policies ng EITF for our safety and for the safety of the people we are covering from the grassroots, lalo na po yung nasa evacuation area. So, yun. Ang hirap ng public transportation at napakamahal. What are our fears at the time? Yung kasi nga nagkaroon at the time ng balik probinsya. So sa balik probinsya na experience namin, na notice namin na mas tumataas yung COVID cases sa Bicol region, lalo na sa Legazpi kasi Legazpi is the regional center. So lahat ng mga tao dito pumupunta kasi nandito yung seat of government. So at that time, na-notice namin na ang Legazpi parang since one-stop shop siya ng mga tao, as corridor siya ng disaster. So corridor pa rin siya ng COVID kasi dito nga lahat bumabagsak. So yung mga balik probinsya kahit meron pong policies na ini-implement ang national government and the regional EITF, but just the same, masyado pong mabilis yung pag-spread ng COVID at that time. So yung fear na pwede kang makahawa, pwede mong mahawaan ang pamilya mo, or pwede kang makahawa dun sa mga kino-cover mo. So yun ang isa sa mga kinakatakutan din namin. And at that time, at kahit ngayon, bihira po yung mga media outlets kasi nga nagkaroon ng economic downturn tayo. So medyo mahirap sa mga publication na ma-provide lahat ng kailangan ng mga mamahayag na nag-cover sa baba. I mean from the ground. So there was no hazard pays. Depende sa institution, sa publication na you are affiliated. With limited financial resources in support from the publication dahil nga dun sa napakataas pa ng inflation. So ito yung lahat pinagsama-samang problema ng mga mamahayag at nating mga Filipino during the hardest lockdown. So it was a survival of the fittest covering the disaster and lockdown. So Bicol kasi is double whammy because of disasters and pandemic. So this is Legazpi. During nighttime and daytime, ganito yung itsura niya. So parang it's a ghost town kasi walang public transportation. Tapos kahit may private vehicle ka, limited din na gumagalaw kasi nga merong curfew. So at that time, ang curfew sa Legazpi is between nung hardest lockdown is 8 o'clock to 4 a.m. So ganun ka strict. Tapos hindi ka basta makakalabas kasi nga that time nagla-lockdown bawat barangay to protect the community from the possible escalation ng virus. So this is Legazpi at that time during the hardest lockdown. Yung 2020 and the early 2021. So ganito po ang itsura ng Legazpi. So here yung sinabi ko na po kanina, yung takot ng mga mamahayag na pwede kang mahawaan at makahawa sa pamilya. And so eto yung mga pinupuntahan namin. Ako, pinupuntahan kong area at that time maliban sa, syempre nasa labas ka parate sa mga camps kung saan andun yung mga nakatira na evacuees kasi karamihan for 1 year ang Bicol po, ang Albay specifically and Catanduanes. Pero mas grabe po ang Albay kasi maraming nawala ng bahay dahil sa nagkaroon ng remobilization ng volcanic material. So more than almost thousands of houses were buried alive. Yung may mga namatay, they were buried alive. Tapos yung mga houses po na tinabunan ng mga volcanic materials at the time. So they are staying in temporary shelter. At sa temporary shelters na yon, nagkaroon pa rin po ng hardest lockdown sa school kasi nagkaroon ng evacuees na positive sa COVID. So yun ang medyo delicate coverage kasi nasa disaster sila, merong mga nahawaan ng virus. So grabe yung kahigpit ang policies na in-implement po for us to follow the protocols pag-cover ng disaster and pandemic. And ano yung pinaka-other impact sa aming mamamayag sa countryside? Ang pagsara po ng ABS-CBN and the Sagid-Sitnos FM na nawalan kami ng katuwang sa pagtatrabaho to feed a legit and informative information sa tao. Kasi at that time, ang problema natin ngayon, yung spread ng fake news, ng disinformation sa Facebook. Tapos eto yung mga kasama namin na wala ng trabaho. So parang mas mabigat ang pinasa namin kasi imbis na meron kaming mas maraming katuwang to feed the reliable information, mas nahirapan kami kasi nga mas kumonte ang naging kasamahan namin na nagtatrabaho sa labas. So ito, yung pagsara ng ABS-CBN during the heights of pandemic and disaster sa Bicol, masyadong napakahirap para sa mamamayag sa countryside dahil sa mas lumiit yung information na i-feed natin sa public. So what are the challenges na we are coping up sa coverage namin during the pandemic? Since meron tayong hybrid na ginagawa, so eto yung dapat malakas yung internet mo kasi nagkakataon na ang hirap-hirap ng internet connection sa Bicol at the time dahil nga sa number 1, yung series of disasters. So parati kaming walang power. So yung internet connection mahirap din kasi nga yung mga lines defective. So kailangan ayusin. So mas nagpahirap pa to sa mga mamahayag. nagkaroon ng radical change sa coverage at the time. Kasi maraming mga lumalabas na information sa Facebook at the time na kailangan mo i-counter-check para hindi maniwala yung tao. Para yung information na nababasa nila, maririnig nila from the mainstream media, totoo. Para ma-counter natin yung mga disinformation na lumalabas sa Facebook. So, yung the new normal is the virtual press conferences, mga webinars, pero at the time kasi, or kahit ngayon, medyo mahirap kasi yung mga questions mo na hindi masyado favorable sa mga institution na kino-cover na kakat siya. So, hindi siya in toto kung nagtatanong ka man or isisend mo man your question, hindi sila babasahin. So, yun ang dilemma na encounter ng mga mamahayag. So, nagkakaroon ng, we call it, yung they're trying to sanitize the question. Unlike nung face-to-face na no holds bar kung ang journalist i-critical magtanong, so makakapagtanong ka na gusto mong tanong. So ang virtual press briefing is beneficial sa mamahayag. Sometimes yes, yung mga lalo pag wala kang masasakayan, pero we see it na mas beneficial siya sa government entities kasi nga yung mga questions sinasala nila, so hindi natatanong yung mga critical questions or else hindi nila binabasa. Pagtingin nila hindi maganda para sa kanila. And another thing is some local media organizations, government agencies and officials, pinipili lang nila yung iniimbitahan, yung mga friendly to them, pero yung mga critical journalists, hindi. Sinisit aside nila. So they didn't invite the media practitioner na medyo critical to them. So, eto. Today, di ba, we should be neutral. Sinasabi natin lagi na we should be neutral lagi. Pero ngayon, we have to stand our ground. Kailangan tayong tumayo kung ano ang tama. Kasi ang kulang at the time, kulang ang pakaramdam namin. So we are longing for truth during ng hardest lockdown. Kasi nga, limited yung information sa national government agencies. Pero for a journalist, siyempre, hindi ka pwedeng. There's so many ways to kill a cat. There's so many ways to get an information. So, kami, ako at 10 na aking mga kasamaan, kami laging nasa field kasi mas nandun ang balita sa ground, lalo na sa grassroots. So, ang balita po, hindi lang doon nasa mga government agencies, mas malalaki yung balita na makukuha mo sa grassroots. So, here's our perspective sa coverage ng pandemic during the hardest lockdown. So, hindi lahat ng bansa at walang bansang handa, mayaman man or mahirap, grabe yung impact ng pandemic, lalo na sa mga developing countries like Philippines. Lalo po sa grassroots, napansin namin na mas grabe yung paghihirap ng mga fishermen, farmers, kasi wala silang mode of transportation, walang bumibili dahil sa hardest lockdown. Walang allowed na mga outsider pumasok sa mga barangays kasi nga just to contain itong spread ng virus. So nagkaroon talaga ng super napakahirap para sa mga magsasaka, sa mga fishermen, kasi yung mga produkto nila walang nabili. So nagkakataon na hindi na lang sila naglalaot kasi wala namang bibili. Kung meron man silang mahuli ng mga first grade na isda, walang kakayahan bumili at the time yung mga locals kasi mahal. At saka hindi rin kaya ng mga fishermen ibenta ng mura dahil ang laki ng expenses nila. So they just waiting for the dole out, pero hindi siya sapat. Kaya kahit papano, they're trying to earn a living through their alternative livelihoods, lalo yung seaweeds sa mga farmland areas. So yun lang karamihan. The locals are struggling so much, lalo na po yung mga magsasaka at ang mga mangingisda. So the impact of COVID has even worsened in the Philippines, lalo po sa Bicol na lagi kaming dinadaanan ng typhoon. Ang lalakas ng typhoons, yung Quinta, yung Rolly, and Ulysses, ang daming naparalisang ekonomiya dahil po sa impact ng bagyo. So, sunod-sunod yun. So, so monthly lang kaming, weekly kaming binabayo ng malakas na typhoon sa kalagitnaan po ng pandemya. So, yun ang experiences ng mga mamahayag na you have to adapt the situation na, pero at the time nung una, parang handa ba kami sa pandemya? Handa ba kami sumabak? Sanay kami sa disaster, oo, sanay kami sa ganong coverage. Pero yung limitation na in-implement ng government, yung following the protocol for our safety and for the safety of the people, isa sa consideration yun ng titingnan ng mga mamahayag. But at the end of the day, you have to go out to get the story from the ground para alam ng gobyerno kung anong nangyayari. Kasi dahil nga dun sa limitation na yun, so walang halos nakakarating na mga tamang impormasyon sa kanila kung hindi ka pupunta sa pinaka-laylayan. So you have to go to the grassroots to get and report the story from the ground. So, yun po yung mga experiences ng mga media. So, at that time, yung gandang ginagawa ng media practitioner, yung mga mainstream is, kasi mahirap para sa amin makapunta sa lahat ng mga areas na dapat puntahan. So, parang nagkakaroon kami ng division of assignment. Kami mismo, kahit iba-ibang publication, we get the data from the ground, we share information, for breaking stories lang to but not for feature stories. So, sinishare namin yung mga data na nagagather. Kung hindi ka makakapunta sa, halimbawa, if you could not go to Catanduanes kasi you have to take a boat, to take a ferry boat, or kung merong chopper from the government, yun, makikisakay kami papunta sa area. Or kung dito ka naman sa Albay, yung mga ground zero na pinupuntahan na hindi kayang puntahan ng iba kasi nga sa lawak very extensive kasi yung impact ng disaster. So, kailangan maghati-hati. So, at the end of the day, pagkakuha namin ng mga data, pumupunta kami sa isang area where we are giving information, sharing information kung ano yung mga kailangan ng tao sa mga area, halimbawa sa mga hardest areas, sa mga islands, sa mga ground zeros na pinupuntahan namin. So yun, nawawala ang competition for the sake of reporting kung anong nangyayari sa baba para malaman po ito ng tao at ng gobyerno. So yun. So yun ang magandang ginagawa ng mga mamahayag. So we unite, we provide information, sharing of information. So bahala ka na gumawa ng balita. Maliban lang po yun sa mga feature stories, talagang no sharing of information. So, yun. So, ito yung mga at this area nagkataon kasi na sa Legazpi, nagkaroon ng maraming evacuees. Yung mga travelers from NCR na hindi nakarating ng Mindanao kasi they are supposed to go to the Visayas in Mindanao. Pero dito lang sila sa Legazpi kasi wala nang masasakyan papunta sa kanilang lugar. So, Etong mga evacuees na to, nag-stay lang sa isang area, so nagkumpul-kumpul sila na nagkaroon ng positive sa COVID. So they were locked down sa area. Pero pag pumupunta po ako sa area, I see to it na safe ako. So I'm kompleto yung gear for my protection. Ito po yung sinasabi ko kanina na alternative source of livelihood ng families, ng mga farmers. Yung gulaman, yung seaweeds, eto, at least meron silang buyer locally. At kayang bilhin ng mga locals. And it's a family, yung mga bata, yung mga anak nila tumutulong na rin to augment the resources of the family. Here, through my lens, these marginalized people suffer the brunt of conflict disasters. So, kung nakikita niyo po yung sinasabi ko, it's kung sa situation na grabe yung impact ng disaster, wala na silang bahay, halos walang makain, nagre-rely lang sa government, sa supply ng government at sa supply ng international organization, ng communities. Nakakasurvive ang tao, pinagkakasya kung anong meron, pero dumarating sa punto na napansin ko na parang mas dumami yung mga tao na we called it, na kailangan tingnan yung mental health, naging dapat tingnan ng gobyerno na pag may mga ganitong pandemya, may ganitong sakuna sa gitna ng pandemya, tingnan ng gobyerno yung mental health aspect ng mga biktima ng disaster at sa gitna ng pandemya. Kasi medyo tumaas yung kaso ng mga may mental health difficulties at the time. Dahil sa pagbagsak ng ekonomiya, walang source of livelihood, nawalan ng trabaho, hindi lang tayo mga mamahayag. Pero yung mga tao na walang ibang source, so ito yung napansin namin. So ayan po. Ito right after nung Typhoon Rolly, this is in Tiwi, Albay, isa sa ground zero. Ayan po yung makikita nyo yung kung ano yung mga itsura ng mga tao at the time. So they were building their shanties dito sa Barangay Sugod in Tiwi, Albay para meron silang temporary shelter while waiting for the tarps or other assistance given by the international institution. So, ganyan lang sila. Heto po yung, eto mo napakinabangan pa naman, pero usually pag nakita po ng farmers yung ganyang klase na, kasi ang laki-laki ng gastos sa pagpapatanim po ng palay. Pero sa isang iglap, nawala lang dahil sa disaster. So, ganyan lang. Yan po yung palayan na buti na lamang at hindi natabunan. Pero in other areas in Albay, totally wala. Kasi na po siya, covered na siya ng mud flow. This is also Typhoon Quinta. Ayan, yung mga bahay na tinabunan po ng lahar. Quinta and Rolly, yan. This is in Daraga, Albay. Pero the worst area na na-hit ng mud flow, ng volcanic debris is ang Ginubatan. But, pero halos ganito din po. Ayan. Maraming salamat. That ends my discussion.
Thank you, Rides.
Welcome.
So that really showed to you kung paano yung impact ng COVID-19 pandemic sa community journalist. And natatahi siya dun sa sinabi ni Prof. Ipe kanina na among community journalists, parang mas may resistance pagdating sa virtual press conferences, ano? Siguro just to wrap up lang yung kay Rides. So, ang context ito, ang Bicol kasi talaga is a one-stop shop for disasters. Okay, so kung may bagyong parating, tatama yan sa Bicol. Lagi silang welcoming the bagyo with open arms. So maliban sa pandemic, they also had those series of strong typhoons. So ang term nga ni Rides doon is that it was a survival of the fittest. Ganun yung nangyari sa kanila. I-highlight lang natin na even before the pandemic, yung mga community journalists natin were at the bottom of the totem pole pagdating sa benefits and support from the media outfits. But this has become more prevalent during the pandemic. There was an internet challenge. Diba? I think that's one of the reasons why among community journalists hindi comfortable sa Zoom na press con kasi challenge for them yung internet connection pa lang.
Yeah.
There was also, for Rides, she said that the government benefited more from these virtual press briefings kasi sometimes critical questions were not allowed. The perceived friendly media were given priority. Pero for her, the solution is to take a stand, to keep on looking for the truth and telling the truth. Truth-telling pa rin, no, Rides? Regardless of platform and circumstances.
Yeah.
At ito pala, bago ko pakawalan si Rides, but we'll call her back pagdating sa Q&A. Ang interesting dito, competition took a backseat nitong pandemic. Para kung saan pwedeng magtulong-tulong yung mga reporters. Of course, not sa feature stories or enterprise, ano. Pero kung yung mga breaking news na lahat naman makakakuha, they would be helping each other. Kahit kalaban mo, kung walang sasakyan, pwede mong masakayan. Sakay, di ba?
Mm-hmm.
That is very common actually among Filipino journalists. Especially those covering disasters, lalo yung mga nasa probinsya. Although even here in NCR that happens. So ayun, on that note, thank you, Rides. I will call you again later sa Q&A, please, along with Prof. Now, at this point, I'd like to call our third speaker. She is the head of ABS-CBN's Bayan Mo Ipatrol Mo, Rowena Caranza Paraan, to discuss citizen journalism in the time of coronavirus. Hi, Weng. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon sa inyong lahat. Hello, UST. Hello, Prof. Ipe. Maligayang biyahe kay Ariel. So, maganda yung shinare ni Rides, no? Tungkol dun sa konkretong nangyayari sa field. Lalo na sa mga kasamahan natin sa media na naka-based sa probinsya. Ako, Bicolano ako, yung family ko are all from Bicol, both mother and father side. So, alam ko yung sinasabi ni Rides na ang Bicol ay parang welcome mat para sa mga bagyo. Ngayon, maraming interesting na bagay na nangyari nung panahon ng pandemic. And one of them is actually na lumabas kung gaano malaki yung pwedeng maging papel ng citizen journalism, no, pagdating sa pagkuha ng balita at pag-disseminate ng balita. So, let me share my screen. Ayan, nakikita po ba ninyo? Sana nakikita.
Yes, Weng. Naka-flash.
Okay, thank you.
Naka-flash. Thank you.
So, citizen journalism in the time of coronavirus. Hindi na bago yung citizen journalism, no? Matagal na to. Makikita natin sa maraming even in fact, Bayan Mo Ipatrol Mo has been here for 15 years, no? So, ngayong taon na to, 2022, 15 taon na yung BMPM, yung tawag namin sa Bayan Mo Ipatrol Mo, the citizen journalism platform of ABS-CBN. So hindi na siya bago, matagal na siya. Kaya lang nung dumating yung pandemic, nakita kung paano po pwedeng palang gamitin yung citizen journalism sa panahon na hindi kaya ng mga reporters because of the risks na lumabas na umikot-ikot, o kaya yung dahil sa kawalan ng resources, katulad ng sinasabi ni Rides, na hindi ka basta-basta makaalis, kaya dahil wala kayong sarili nyong sasakyan, wala kayong, o kaya yung sources mo mismo ayaw makipagkita ng face-to-face. So you really have to make do with Zoom interviews na hindi siya satisfying, no? Hindi mo makita yung body language, pwede kang i-off, yung sinasabi ni Professor Ipi kanina, pwede kang hindi pansinin kung meron kang gustong tanungin, pwedeng sabihin na mahina yung signal ko, hindi kita marinig. So, nakita na yung citizen journalism ay pwedeng, pwedeng hindi lang augmentation, but can actually play a very important role in the newsroom. So ano yung pag-uusapan natin? Citizen journalism in the Philippines at saka yung role ng citizen journalism under a pandemic. Pagka-favor lang, kapag nakita nyo si Spider-Man, sa any of the slides, kung pwedeng paki-type sa chat box yung letters na PPI for Philippine Press Institute, no? So every time you see Spider-Man, maliit, malaki, paki-type sa chat box yung PPI. Mamaya ipapaliwanag ko, bakit si Spider-Man? Bakit hindi si Wonder Woman? O bakit hindi si Superman o si SpongeBob? Okay. To start the discussion, I would like to talk about what happened at the Boston Marathon in April 2013. The Boston Marathon is an event para sa mga nasa sports, no, na napaka-importante at malaki. No? Pinupuntahan ito ng mga tao mula sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, o kaya marami ring sumasali. So malaki siya, no, sa mundo ng palakasan. But on April 15, 2013, there was a bombing that happened. And the first information about it came out at 2:57 p.m. And it wasn't from the media, but it was from a netizen, no? From Bryce Engler. He said, was 2 blocks away from the Boston Marathon finish line when boom, boom, gray smoke, lots of police. So 2:57. This was followed at 3:08 by Taylor Dobbs. And then finally, Atlantic Wire broke the story at 3:20. So 2:57, 3:20. 23 minutes na gap, no? Sa digital reporting, medyo malaki yan, no? Kasi segundo yung binibilang dyan. At kung dito sa Pilipinas, kantsawan na yan, no? Naunahan ka. Pag nagkikita-kita po yung mga journalists na nasa online platforms, madalas yung kantsawan niya na, uy, naunahan kita ng 3 segundo nung blah, blah, blah. Ganyan. So for a media entity, naunahan ng 23 minutes, no, for a huge event katulad ng isang bombing sa isang malaking sports activity katulad ng Boston Marathon. Medyo malaki yan. And then finally, CNN International broke it at 3:40. So that's 43 minutes later than the netizen who first informed the public about it. So ano yung pinapakita ng incident na to? Pinapakita niya na hindi na lang media yung may kakayahan na kumuha at magbalita, no? Yung kumuha ng impormasyon at ibalita ito sa mamamayan. Yung mga kaordinaryong mamamayan ay kayang kumuha ng information at sila mismo yung mag-disseminate ng information. So nakikita natin yung malaking potential ng citizen journalism. Sa Pilipinas, nangyari yung isang tinawag na huli dap, no? Kunwari huli pero may pang-hold up na nangyayari, no? Ayan. Maraming salamat sa mga pumapansin kay Spider-Man, kay Sherina Marie, kay Angeli Ruth, kay Matthew, kay Nicole, maraming salamat, kay Justine. Thank you everyone. Yeah. So ano yung nangyari dito sa hulidap na to? Isang vehicle along EDSA, no? Lahat tayo nakadaan na siguro sa EDSA. And this thing happened just a few meters away from the national headquarters of the Philippine National Police. May isang private vehicle, kinat siya ng another vehicle. And from the second vehicle, alighted several men with long firearms. May hawak silang mga M16, no? Na nakikita lang natin sa pelikula. Tapos, sabi nila merong traffic violation daw na ginawa yung driver ng unang sasakyan. Pero hindi naman tayo gumagamit ng M16, no, sa traffic violation. And then later, sabi nila may drugs. So isang tao na nakikita yung nangyari, kinuhanan niya ng picture dahil bahala siya. Tapos in-upload niya sa Twitter account niya. Actually, after a while, binaba niya rin. Siguro natakot siya. Pero nakita na ng media, nakita na ng mga iba pang netizens. So, na-capture siya at saka kumalat na. At maraming salamat dito sa concerned citizen na to kasi kung hindi niya nakuhanan ng litrato yung nagaganap na hulidap, hindi matatapos yun, no, ng parang wala lang. No? So, dahil doon, inimbestigahan yung pangyayari and the policemen involved, it turned out that the armed men were actually active police officers. They were investigated and charged, no, with the appropriate crime. So ito, again, concerned citizen took a photo, uploaded it in his Twitter account, and nagkaroon ng investigation because of that. Nung nakaraang eleksyon, marami ring mga nakitang materials, no, na dahil sa mga padala ng mga citizen journalists. Ayan. Thank you. Nakabaliktad ngayon si Spider-Man. Ito ay mga video na nangyari, nakuhanan sa araw ng eleksyon sa Lanao del Sur, no? So tingnan natin yung ilan. And after a while, meron diyang mga putok-putok. Ito naman, isa rin, Lanao del Sur. Mga tao na kinuha yung mga balota. So these are magkaibang presinto to, no, sa Lanao del Sur. So these are videos sent by, again, citizen journalists who wanted to show to the public what was happening in their voting area. So pinadala nila ito. Ito naman ay, again, panahon din ng eleksyon, gusto nilang ipakita kung paano yung mga tao ganun kadesidido bumoto. Na kahit putik-putik dun sa lugar nila, nakalubog talaga sila sa putik, hawak nila ng marami sa kanila yung mga tsinelas nila at lumubog sila, no, para makapila at makaboto. Ito naman ay tungkol dun sa nasirang vote counting machine.
Ang mga simple things na natin bakit hindi ka mag-manual counting? Manunood kami lahat dito.
Yeah. Ito yung mga tao na naghintay hanggang alas 3, alas 4 ng madaling araw para mapalitan yung VCM dahil nga huminto yung pagboto. So ang option nila was either to sagutan yung balota tapos iwan sa teacher tapos sila na lang yung mag-feed sa machine kapag napalitan na yung machine. Pero ayaw pumayag ng maraming tao, so they stayed dito sa Teachers Village East, no? Yung ganitong eksena. At yung kuha na to ay nung gabi na, very, very late na, no? Nung nandun pa rin sila. In fact, inabot sila ng madaling araw the following day. Ito, ganun din, no? Vote counting machine. So these are scenes during the elections na kung wala ka doon, kung wala yung media doon, wala kang video na makukuha. Hindi mo malalaman yung detalye. Of course, media was getting all sorts of reports, no? And some reporters were even at the precincts where the problems with the VCM happened. Pero yung mga eksena ng hintayan, yung madaling araw, ang makakapagbigay na lang sa inyan, mga citizen journalists. So makita natin yung napakalaking pwedeng papel ng citizen journalism pagdating sa pagbabalita. At ito pa pala, no, hindi lang problema but also things like this, no, na mga ito nilagay daw niya sa daliri niya kasi gusto niyang ipaalala yung pagboto para sa bayan, hindi lang para sa mga kandidato, kundi para sa bayan yung ating boto. Ganun din yung gustong mensahe nitong gumawa ng food art, no? Ang galing nila, no? Ang galing ng ginagawa nila. So these are things also that citizens are the ones who would be able to catch. Medyo mahirap yung reporters na mapansin yung mga ganito, lalo na sa panahon ng halalan na ang dami-daming nangyayari. So yung citizen journalism, again, reporting by ordinary citizens tungkol sa mga nangyayari sa kanilang paligid, karaniwan tungkol sa community nila. No? And with the advent of citizen journalism, yung pagkalat niya, marami ring related terms na lumabas tulad ng crowdsourcing. And citizen journalism is a form of crowdsourcing. No? Siguro ang pinakamadali for the students, yung crowdsourcing na ginagawa sa Wikipedia. No? Kaya sa newsroom, ayaw na source ang Wikipedia. Kasi kahit sino, no, pwede kang magpasok ng entry sa Wikipedia and you can even edit the entries there. So, crowdsourced ang content ng Wikipedia. And then yung term na user-generated content, UGC, katulad ng mga pinakita kong video, those are examples of UGC. And then yung tinatawag na hyperlocal journalism. Kasi nga yung citizen journalism, nakafocus siya dun sa kung ano yung nangyayari dun sa paligid nila. Kaya nagkakaroon ng hyperlocal na yung nakatutok sa very specific geographical area or very specific issues na nangyayari dun sa isang lugar. So all of these ay mga terms na lumalabas na related, no, sa citizen journalism. Meron ding mga to show na yung citizen journalism, how pervasive it has become. There are actually big international groups that have emerged. Katulad nitong Storyful, they buy UGCs, no? Pag nakakita sila ng maganda, unique, nagbabayad sila para gamitin yung mga video and photos na nilalabas ng mga netizen. Ito yung example ng isang report nila na sinabi nila, nag-trinak nila yung COVID-19. No? They did a special report on COVID-19 and they verified almost 3,000 videos and stories na lumabas sa social media, no? Creating one of the world's most comprehensive archives of social videos and stories relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you want to know more about Storyful, puntahan nyo lang yung kanilang website at tingnan nyo on how it operates. Another outfit that deals with citizen journalists' output ay yung Bellingcat. Yung maganda sa Bellingcat, they do investigative reports, no, using user-generated contents. Kaya dito, ang description nila, Bellingcat's innovative approaches to using publicly available data and citizen journalist analysis have been particularly significant for advancing narratives of conflict, crime, and human rights abuses. So these are two very good examples ng or proof, no, ng how citizen journalism has become has been playing a major role. So dito sa Pilipinas ngayon, yung mga media organizations that have embarked on citizen journalism are ABS-CBN with Bayan Maipatrol Mo, GMA7 with YouScoop, Rappler with Move PH, tapos meron din yung Radyo 5, meron sila yung tinatawag na Taxi Squad. No? Tapos hindi lang to, meron ding ibang forms. Halimbawa ang DCRH, they also have a fleet of drivers, no, who report, nagsasabi kung ano yung traffic, kumusta yung aksidente, etc. At sila mismo yung umiere para magbalita ng kung ano yung nangyayari, nakita nila. Meron ding ronda sa Zamboanga na binanggit si Julie Alipalan during one of the series, no, in one of the talks. Ronda Balita. No? So, ito yung mga pinakamalalaki in the sense na consistent at saka may definite program. But there are also versions of citizen journalism being implemented in other media organization. Itong mga to, they marry, no, the strength of mainstream media and the strength of social media. So, paano nakakatulong yung citizen journalism? So, to show you, I'll play this video. Report ito ng dalawang high school students sa Bohol. After attending a citizen journalism workshop, ay binidyo nila yung kanilang eskwelahan na walang sahig, walang CR, walang dingding. Sorry. So, yun yung eskwelahan nila, no? Ayan ang itsura. Walang dingding, walang sahig. Kita-kita natin doon sa basa-basang sahig na pag umulan, pumapasok. And then, wala rin silang CR, just to show you the CR. Ito lang ang CR nila. Which is not a CR. Okay. So, binidyo nila. Nilabas natin yung report nila sa TV Patrol at nung mailabas na siya sa media, umaksyon yung LGU, no? So ito na yung naging itsura nung kanilang eskwelahan. Ayan, may design yung pintuan na Spider-Man. Meron ng dingding, meron ng bintana, I'm assuming yung CR din na ayos na. So, dalawang high school students concerned about the state of their school took a video of the school and sent it to media, reporting as citizen journalists. Yung ganito, kahit sabihin nyo, hindi siguro papasa, no, dun sa ibang mga eskwelahan dito sa Manila, yung ganitong itsura. Sa kanila, sobrang laking bagay na. Yung maayos, no, maging maayos, magkaroon ng dingding at sahigman lang yung kanilang eskwelahan. Ito naman ay photo sent from Sorsogon, no, ng isang concerned resident kasi nakikita niya to umaga-araw. This is not just an overloaded jeepney, but this is a school service. So sa umaga ganyan ang itsura, sa hapon paghatid ganito yung itsura. Mga bata na nakakapit, nasa taas. Capture ito sa isang video, no? So the resident reported it and then the LGU took action after the report came out. And of course, kapag panahon ng eleksyon, yung walang kamatayang mga vote buying. No? And then pagka meron namang mga katulad nito na sunog, kapag panahon ng calamities tulad ng lindol, tulad ng bagyo, superstar sa newsroom ang mga citizen journalist kasi sa kanila nang gagaling yung mga magaganda, pinaka-dramatic, pinaka-emotional na mga images of what happened in their communities because of the calamities. So sa kanila kami nagpapasalamat ng malaki kasi sila yung nagbibigay ng real-time na reports of what's happening. Nitong Odette, nitong Agaton, sobrang laking bagay, no? And as you all know, wala ng regional stations yung ABS-CBN, but still we were able to provide the public updates on the situations in the different areas because of citizen journalism. Tapos hindi lang problema, pwede rin mga pampagood vibes katulad nito. This one naman sa U-Scoop, pinadala sa kanila mga keyboard na may design. No? Parang ayaw mo lagyan ng daliri yan. Sayang yung food. Okay. So just to summarize, paano nakakatulong yung citizen journalism? It highlights community issues. It calls attention to emergencies. It provides updates from the ground on important issues such as elections and calamities. And it provides a venue for sharing positive experiences. Mga good vibes. Nitong nakaraang pandemya, paano ba nakatulong yung citizen journalism? Yan. Thank you, Noreen. Kay Angela, kay Justine, kay Christian, kay Aubrey, Sherina. Thank you lahat sa inyo for making pansin of Spider-Man. So ano yung naging role niya nung pandemya sa harap ng merong virus, no? At isa ito doon sa mga reports na natanggap ng Bayan May Patrol mo. This came through the inbox of our page. Kunikwento niya yung paano yung health protocol hindi pinapatupad dun sa kanilang barangay dahil pinapayagan mag-basketball. Meron pang kagawad daw nakasama dun sa basketball. Paano daw ba yung pwedeng gawin? Yan. With photos nung kanyang isinusumbong. Tapos nung panahon ng pandemic, lalo na nung unang mga weeks ng lockdown, nang wala pang vaccine, hindi mo alam kung anong mangyayari. Yung mga nakaka-recover at lumalabas sa hospital, tuwan-tuwa tayo. Tapos kinukuhanan nila ng video, tapos pinapadala nila sa mga networks yung nakukuha nilang video para magbigay ng pag-asa, magbigay ng balita na hindi naman hindi ka necessary ring mamamatay pag nagka-virus ka. In fact, merong mga ganitong nakaka-recover. And then this one, gusto ko tong photo na to. Nanggaling naman siya sa taxi squad. Kasi pinapakita niya yung mga tao na nakapila kahit 10:00 na ng gabi para humingi ng ayuda. So, nakakaano, no? And again, ang makakakuha nito will be somebody who's from the area. Tapos nanggaling din sa mga citizen journalists yung mga balita o yung mga kwento tungkol sa mga frontliners. Tulad nito na nagpupunta sa malalayong lugar. At ito naman yung kwento ng isang nurse nung kanyang mga sacrifices para sa atin. And then nung pinayagan yung pilot ng face-to-face class, and we were all wondering, anong magiging itsura ng face-to-face class? So this was one of the schools that was allowed to do face-to-face. Understandably, nandun yung sa malalayong lugar. Ito yung sa Botolan, Zambales. So there was a citizen journalist who took a series of photos, hindi lang ito. Meron pa yung mga bata, bago sila papasukin, kinukuha yung temperature, sinasanitize, etc. So nakapagpaano siya, nakapagbigay siya ng idea na okay, ngayon pwede naman pala kasi ganito yung magiging itsura ng face-to-face classes. Tapos mga citizen journalists din yung nagpadala ng mga nagsusumbong ng mga disinformation na kumakalat tungkol sa COVID-19. Ito yung isang shot ng sa messenger app, hindi ito nakalagay sa public wall. Ito yung mga pinapadala sa mga private messenger apps, So ito yung pinaka-natutuwa ako dito. May nag-test na niyan dito gamit ang papaya fruit at nagka-positive ang papaya sa COVID. Yun. So yung papaya pwede pala magka-COVID. So tumutulong din sila to disseminate yung fact-checking tungkol dito sa COVID-19. So ito yung halimbawa, fake news na kumalat tungkol dun sa requirement sa mga foreign visitors na dumarating sa Pilipinas. Kailangan mo ng One Health Pass at may bayad daw yung One Health Pass na hindi totoo kasi walang bayad yung pass. No? Then as I said, nagpapadala sila ng mga pampagod vibes sa mga video. Katulad nito, no? Mga nurses from BGC, St. Luke's BGC, na in fairness, magaling sila sumayaw. Yan. Parang masaya tapusin yung video pero maubos ang oras. And then, it was also through the citizen journalism platforms that call-outs like this are made. No? Paano binago ng pandemya ang buhay nyo? So this one came out during the anniversary last March 15. Kasi pang 2 years no, na anniversary nung umpisa ng lockdown. And then, ganito naman linabas ng news ko, paano kayo nagpapalipas ng oras ngayong ECQ? Yung mga ganito nagbibigay pagkakataon para makapaglabas sila ng kanilang saloobin, no? Yung mga ordinaryong mamamayan. So, to summarize, ano yung roles na ginampanan ng citizen journalism during the pandemic? One is giving information about the situation in the community. Sila yung nagbibigay ng update. They help monitor compliance with the health protocols. They help fight disinformation. They share relevant information with friends, help each other cope by providing inspiring stories of resilience, no? Katulad ng mga video ng mga nadi-discharge sa hospital. And then, ito yung huli, ito yung pinaka-essence ng citizen journalism. It's giving people a voice. No? But I would like to emphasize that citizen journalism is still journalism. It follows the same principles that mainstream journalism follows. Accuracy, fairness, balance, independence, truth-telling. These are the same principles that should be followed in citizen journalism. Yung kumuha ng video tapos pinost lang basta sa kanyang wall without verification, without any information to provide context, hindi siguro yung journalism. So yun. So bakit si Spider-Man? Because citizen journalism, the same as journalism, meron siyang responsibility, no? Meron siyang responsibility to provide the public information, to provide the truth, hindi yung mali o kulang o ibang konteksto. Para sa atin, yung citizen journalism, pareho lang siya ng journalism. No? So, hindi lahat ng nakikita natin sa Facebook, sa Twitter, lalo na sa TikTok at sa YouTube, hindi siya journalism. So, ang sabi nga ni Professor Ben Domingo dun sa isang forum, hindi lahat ng nababasa ay resulta ng periodismo. Okay. So, yun po. Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat sa mga nagbantay kay Spider-Man. Maliit, malaki. Pero sino na nga yung nagsabi ng with great power comes great responsibility?
Hindi na si Uncle Ben yan.
Yun, si Uncle Ben. Pero sa huling version ng movie, hindi na si Uncle Ben. Ayun, tama si Marco. Si Aunt May na ang nagsabi. So yun, naging siya na cliche na siya, no? But it's a cliche that continues to hold truth, no? So yun, marami pong salamat sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Weng. Thank you kay Spider-Man for keeping us awake. Hindi ba napansin na si Spider-Man ay isang kasama natin sa hanay ng media? Superhero slash photojorn nga ba siya? Same as Clark Kent, diba? Yeah. Superman. Karamihan sa mga superheroes yata involved din sa journalism. Oh, and by the way, let's not forget, just today, they announced na isa sa 3 bagong saints who will be announced by Pope Francis on Sunday is actually a journalist, Titus Brandsma. So, okay. Isang boost para sa ating lahat? Does that mean kailangan magpakamartir?
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that, Joyce. Yung si Titus Brandsma, alam nyo, lumaban yan sa Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
Oo.
Parang
And
sa
yung
mga
local
journalist na
congregation of Carmelites has been handing out awards in the name of Blessed, soon-to-be Saint Titus Brandsma.
parang hindi maiaalis ang pagiging patriotic at palaban sa mga journalists. Kaya, ayan, either we become martyrs, we become saints, or we stay old enough in the profession and become PR people. Yun ang flip side. So, we encourage our students to please put in the chat box if you have questions or comments. And then, or if you want to ask them personally, then just kindly raise your hand. Ako may tanong muna ako. First for Prof. Ipe, and then maybe Rides could also take this question. Given the difficulties of Zoom press briefing, based on your qualitative interviews and based on your experience rides sa Bicol, how would journalists work around this situation? So may mga nawala, pero paano yung naging solutions ng mga journalists to address this? Prof. Ipe, you want to?
I have talked to journalists na they do direct messages, no? They send direct messages to some government officials, pero syempre hindi lahat receptive, no? So, but some have found sending direct messages to be very helpful, and from there nagiging phone call or nagiging chat, no? So far yun yung isa sa mga nakita kong mga workaround solution, but for many parang these virtual news conferences have been a source of frustration for many reasons. Some of them cited by Ma'am Weng and some of them mentioned by Rides already.
Rides, before I ask you to take on this question, can I ask Weng first just one question because she has to leave the Zoom room for another meeting, Weng, are photos or videos submitted by citizen journalists also vetted? And how do we ensure that journalistic principles are still upheld by citizen journalists?
Definitely, they are still vetted. Lalo na knowing that they're coming from people who have not been trained, the same way that journalists are trained. Halimbawa, yung simpleng detalye lang ng anong oras yan kinuhanan. Kasi kung bagyo yan, mahirap na kinuhanan siya ng umaga, but you report it in the newscast in the evening. So parang ganun pa rin yung sitwasyon na parang antas pa rin ng baha, etc. So kailangan yung accuracy ng information. And sometimes hindi ganun ka-conscious yung mga tao na mahalaga yung oras. So kailangan lang pa rin kunin. Anong oras po ninyo kinuhanan? Nasaan kayo banda? Nung kinuhanan nyo yan? Sa inyo po ba yan? Baka naman kasi sa friends pala, sobrang excited, shinare. So, a lot of times, hindi naman, hindi dahil sa they steal yung materials from other people, but hindi lang ganun ka-conscious ng intellectual property right at saka nung providing the exact information. So kailangan pa rin talagang very carefully vetted lahat ng materials.
Do you have enough people sa team ninyo to actually check? Kasi just before the elections, yung mom ko, naka-encounter siya ng isang manipulated video. It was combination, Weng. Hindi na lang siya deep fake. Pati yung naka-flash sa screen ni Mean, Los Baños of TV5. Iniba nila. So iba yung nagsasalita. She was reporting that hindi kailangan ng RT-PCR or negative antigen result para makaboto. Ang sinasabi ng deepfake, kailangan. Yung screen niya sa likod where naka-flash yung DOH material, edited din. So pag tinignan mo, parang kumpletong-kumpleto at totoong-totoo yung ganung klaseng video. Sa Citizen Journal, do you have enough in your team to check kung deepfake ba to, manipulated ba?
We have a team of, right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. No? We call them content aggregators. They're the ones who deal with submissions, no? So sila yung kapag nag-submit ka, sila yung nagtatanong, kuha po ba ninyo to? Yan. Yun yung unang tanong Laging yung unang tanong. Kasi you need to establish ownership of the material. Tapos kailan nyo po kinuhanan? Meron pa po ba kayong ibang video o ibang photo? Nasaan po kayo nung kinuhanan ninyo ito? Etc. So, kwentuhan lang yan pero they're actually already verifying the story and the materials. There are techniques, hindi siya basta-basta kasi mamaya may magalit sa'yo kasi akala mo nagsisinungaling ako. Pero masaya yung pag nakakausap mo yung mga tao kasi talagang gusto nilang magbigay ng balita, gusto nilang mag-participate. Tapos lalo na kung they feel very strongly about it, talagang magpa-follow up pa yan o kailan nyo ilalabas. Hindi rin naman namin call kung ano yung ilalabas, di ba? It's the executive producer ng newscast yung magsasabi nun. Pero, ma-realize natin kung gaano ka importante sa kanya yung issue. So kapag lumabas, ina-update din namin siya o kaya binibigyan namin siya ng link nung kapag lumabas na. It's important to have a team, no, na trained in verifying and dealing with netizens kasi hindi rin siya madali.
Thank you, Weng. If our students in the Zoom room have questions for Weng, I think now is the time for you to ask her because she will have to leave in a bit.
Actually, I have to leave now. So, ayun, sige, isang question lang si
Somebody held up his hand. Kenneth Fernando, you'd like to ask, baka you'd like to ask personally? Nag-raise ang hand there.
Okay. Clarify ko lang po, paano kaya nag-gather ng data or information like dun sa pie charts?
Sorry, paano kayo nag-gather ng data?
Yung parang paano po sa pie charts at surveys and stuff?
Sa survey. Baka kay Sir Ibet?
Data, if you're asking how we gathered our data, we conducted, the surveys were done online while the qualitative interviews were mixed. No? Yung iba in-person, yung iba Zoom, online.
And it was purposive, Prof, di ba? Even the quantity.
Sampling is purposive.
Sampling is purposive. Other questions? Otherwise, we say thank you to Weng and then we'll have Prof. Ipet still and rides with us. Weng, maraming salamat.
Gusto ko lang i-acknowledge yung presence ni Professor Ben Domingo, Tatay Ben.
Oh, of course. Hello, Sir Ben.
From Nueva Ecija. Masugid po na laging nanonood po sa PPI webinar. And then nakita ko rin po nandito rin po yung head ng journalism program ng University of Rizal System Angono, si Professor Maria Cecilia Villegas. Hi Ma'am Ces, welcome to the Zoom room.
Alam mo, napansin ko lang may isa o dalawa dito na parang nag-intern sa amin. Pauline, I think Pauline nag-intern yan sa Standard. Okay, Rides, you want to answer the first question kanina?
Sorry, ano nga yung question?
How do you work around yung Zoom briefings? So kung hindi makuha doon ng information, ano ang solution ng mga journalists at pag ganon?
Kasi sa Zoom, sinabi ko, kasi ako marami kasi akong question na either hindi binabasa or kinakat. So naiinis ako doon na hindi siya binabasa in toto yung question ko. So hindi ko rin nakukuha ng maganda yung sagot nung dapat source ko. Halimbawa lalo sa ITF. So usually pag ganyan, mas bumababa ako. So mas pinagpasasalita ako yung mga tao, yung mga affected kasi mas marami silang kwento na halos hindi kasi napupuntahan ng mga agencies yung mga concerns nila. So mas bumababa ako sa kanila. Mas deeper than going with them. Kasi kahit gumawa pa ako ng communication kasi maraming beses na gumawa ako ng communication sa several national government agencies na hindi nagpa-interview yung mga taong kailangan ko interviewin, yung mga regional directors kasi controversial yung issue. Ayaw nilang pag sumagot sila, mas mapapahamak sila. Tapos ngayon naman, so pag ganun, mas lalong linalaliman ko yung story sa baba. So napipilitan din silang sumagot.
I wonder if this also came out in your study, Prof. Ipe, no? Maliban dun sa difficulty dun sa press conference, actually ang isa sa nawala, tingin ko, is document gathering eh. Kasi hindi ka na makapunta dun sa mismong beat mo. Either because sarado naman yung press office, sarado yung, like for example, Malacanang. Hindi lang ang source mo doon ay ang spokesperson ng presidente. The bolto ng storya is actually nasa records office. All the EO side, all the AO. So wala ka ng ganung access. Tapos nakadepende ka na lang kung ano i-release nila na dokumento. Was that something na napansin din dun sa study?
Yeah, na-mention din yan. So, but generally, yung restrictions has prevented yung mga pag-iikot ng government offices. No? So, alam mo, dyan tayo nabubuhay di ba? Yung nag-iikot ka ng mga opisina. Sometimes we just go around the offices and just to make kwento. Di ba? Doon sa mga, even the office staff, kasi minsan doon ka makakapulot ng mga leads And I think that's one of the biggest regrets that reporters have amid the pandemic, yung hindi ka na makaikot sa offices. Kasi we want to give our students the correct impression about what journalism is. Journalism is not about attending press conferences. Kasi yung press conferences, these are everybody's stories. No? So journalism is more about getting your own story, going out there, getting your own story by your own enterprise, no? Tawag nga natin enterprise story. Nakahanap ka ng sarili mong story dahil nag-ikot ka, naka-interview ka ng mga sources or nakakuha ka ng dokumento. Admittedly, yan ay isa sa mga mga na-restrict because of the pandemic.
Oo, nabawasan talaga yung access natin diyan.
At saka sa akin kasi parang hindi ako komportable sa ini-interview ko na hindi ko nakikita yung mata. I mean, importante sa akin na nakikita ko eye to eye yung ini-interview ko. Kasi doon mo makikita kung yung ini-interview ko ba, nagsasalita ba ito ng totoo o nagsisinungaling lang. I mean, yung mga gesture, maliban pa dun sa documents na makukuha mo. So, importante sa akin yung eye to eye contact sa interview. Na hindi natin
mga post-work engagements natin. Usually, ando doon ang story Yung after work, magkakape kayo or in some cases, mag-iinuman kayo, di ba? Doon madalas nakukuha mo yung mga off the record pero lead siya for another story that you can pursue. Yun ang medyo nawala sa atin. Pero interesting, Prof, parang it gives us hope na for Filipino journalists, at least dun sa study, very high sa atin yung pagpupush or paghahanap ng marginalized voices or alternative voices to the official sources.
Yeah, it's a pleasant surprise na yung sample natin from the Philippines reporting that they do interview marginalized voices. I think they realize yung the need to balance the coverage kasi nga puro IATF no? So actually nag-adapt talaga yung the COVID-19 story for journalists is one of adaptation really. No? So kung natuto silang maghanap ng mga COVID-19 victims, patients, relatives, no, yung mga nagrereklamo,
Iba using
social
StockMed pa.
media. Na
Yeah.
talaga naghahanap sila sa Facebook. O kaya yung iba, yung isang strategy na nakita ko doon sa isang interview ko is sa comment section sila naghahanap.
Oh.
So they contact
Parang crowdsourcing na rin to, no?
Yes, oo. Although not direct crowdsourcing, pero sa comment section siya nakakahanap ng mga magagandang interviews. So and then from there, nag-aano na sila, I don't know, Facebook call or maybe a Zoom, no, or chat, no. So actually, yun yung isang magandang nangyari, no. So na-expand yung sphere mo of sources, no. Yung iba nakakahanap ng mga international experts sa social media. No, so never daw nilang naisip na yung story nila ay may kasamang mga experts na usually hindi nila nakaka-interact prior to the pandemic.
Parang mabilis yung learning curve dito, no? Wala kang choice but to understand the jargon, PUM, PUI, parang lahat tayo nung una litong-lito tayo. What the hell do you mean? What is this? Diba? Bakit iba yung pag sa PUM? Bakit iba yung PUI? Natawa ako kanina kasi meron tayong direct message na tanong pero parang ayoko siyang tanungin dahil ako mismo yung natawa. But anyway, I will still ask since wala tayong sinesensor dito. Pinapatanong lang niya kung single ka pa daw ba, Rides? Wala siyang kinalaman sa discussion. Ang bubuis lang natin.
Bigla akala ko napaka-seryoso ng tangon.
Akala ko nga din, tingin ko, ano ba to? Yan,
akala ko pa naman.
Mga journalist single.
Akala ko earth-shaking na tanong, ha?
Oo. Single dahil inuuna ang trabaho. Ayan. So kung wala ng questions, maraming salamat, Prof. Ipe. Maraming salamat, Rides. Tuwing na kanina ay nauna na sa atin umalis. Sana huwag kayong magsawa kasi inaantay talaga natin yung conclusion syempre ng study plus yung lessons on the ground sa ating community journalists. So napaka-importante po nung mga diskusyon natin. Thank you. Sobrang maraming salamat po.
Welcome po.
Thank you, Joyce. So alam ko yung mga students natin ibang topic ang gustong pag-usapan. Pero siguro ang masasabi natin sa kanila ay do not be disheartened. If at all, no, we need more courageous journalists as we go along the next few months, and we are eagerly awaiting you joining our profession after your journey with UST. Thank you,
Parang
Joyce.
wala rin kayong love life.
Thank you, Prof. Joyce.
Thank you, Prof. Ipe. Miss Rides. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you, everyone.
We're not yet done, at this point. Because I said we just changed the sequence a bit because I had to leave. Yeah, so at this point, we'd like to ask our students to prepare for our next speaker. This is actually going to be a mini workshop on fact-checking and verification. And I'm very pleased to join us today, the Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Guardian, Mr. Francis Angelo, to discuss Fighting Truth Decay. Hi, Francis. Good afternoon.
Hello, Miss Joyce. Sound check po. Okay lang po pasok nito. Yeah. I'm outdoors kasi. I just had talaba for lunch. Inggit ka, no?
Ay, ugali mo.
Anyway, di po tayo mag-uusap ng pagkain. Although it's a good relief nowadays. We will be, allow me to share my screen po muna. Okay. Right. So, disinformation, malinformation, and truth decay has been a very big issue nowadays, especially in campaign season, election season. Alam naman natin yung resulta ngayon, and we all know that somehow the strategies ng presumptive president-elect was actually nakapundar dun sa dinatawag nating disinformation. So this afternoon, I'll try to guide us through how disinformation is or malinformation is actually produced or fermented, how it spreads, and paano nagsisimula yung mga yan. Before we go to our mini workshop, we will have sort of a game. Laro muna tayo. False or true. I'll show some slides. Then I'll ask for your answers. Kung makikita niyo yung mga slides, totoo ba o hindi. So first is may isang teenager na was penalized, fined 100 pounds. Dahil ito dahil sa pagkakalat habang pinapakain yung ibon dun sa kanila. Is this true or false? Totoo ba ito o hindi? You can drop your answers dun sa ating chat box. Is this true or false? Kenneth? Yes? No? It's true? Tell me si Kenneth na naiwan dito. Okay, actually, this actually happened talaga. May isang pigeon feeder na inasuhan, and then dahil hindi siya nagbayad ng 100 pound na penalty, dahil nga sa bawal yung pwede kang magpakain ng ibon, whatever you feed them, but kailangan mag-ingat na hindi magkakalat dun sa kung saan man yung mga ibon. And because she refused to pay the 100 pound fine, she was actually charged in court. The next slide. Eto, may isang camel daw. Kalahati na lang ng katawan ng naiwan, pero buhay pa. Is this true or false? Totoo ba ito? Hindi. Right? False? Question. Hindi sigurado. False. Matthew. Si Helena. Si Litsi. Then si Jabez. False. Okay. Parang lahat answered false, no? Siyempre naman. It's actually a manipulated photo. Isang buong camel na Photoshop. Kalahati na lang ng katawan ng naiwan at pinalabas na totoo siya in one website. That's the magic of the technology nowadays. Ito. Pwede na daw mag-Facebook dun sa buwan o sa moon. Kasi may yung National Aeronautics and Space Administration ng US nag-install na ng internet infrastructure sa buwan. Is this true or false? Okay, true. Okay, true from Liam. Kenneth Michael. Angeline, true. Lady Pearl, true as well. And Angela May. Alright. So this is actually true. Ang NASA at saka yung Nokia, yung dating sikat sa mobile phones, are actually putting up a 4G network dun sa buwan. And the purpose of this internet network or signal is to para makakuha ng signal or information or data na pinapadala ng deep space telescopes na naka-deploy dun sa ating in our solar system. At least maibalik nila yung image nila doon sa NASA. So they put up this internet network dun sa moon. So pwede tayo mag-Facebook, mag-TikTok dun sa buwan in case na makaabot tayo doon. Alright? Ito, may isa daw mama na ni-rescue o tinulungan ng mga pulis sa Germany dahil hinahabol siya ng cute na baby squirrel na ito. Is this true or not? Totoo ba ito? Nakatuwa, no? Parang cute na maliit na squirrel pero kinakatakot ng isang mama. O may nag-answer ng false, false, Kat Elvis, Jenica Kate, false din, Elvin, false as well. Okay. Hindi nga kapaniwala. Something so cute would actually scare a person. Pero actually, totoo po ito. Ito po yung squirrel, nakatulog na, napagod na rin sa kakahabol dun sa mamang tulungan ng pulis. And it really happened. Now, if you will notice yung mga sagot natin parang minsan ang pumapasok sa isip natin imposible may internet sa buwan. Bakit may internet sa buwan? Or imposible naman na something so cute like that baby squirrel will actually maghahabol ng tao, ng mama. Kasi naman when we see information, we sometimes base our impressions or decision or judgment sa mga information dun sa ating sinasabing biases. Pag we're bombarded with too much information, pinifilter natin yun, sinasala, based on what is ano yung nakasanayan natin, ano yung pumapasok bigla sa isip natin. And one of these biases would be tinatawag nating availability heuristic or availability bias na pumapasok sa agad, kung anong pumapasok agad sa isip natin, yun yung nagiging basis natin to judge information or evaluate information. So it operates under the notion that kung marirecall mo, it must be important or at least more important kaysa dun sa pinipresent sa yung alternative na information. Example, ba't ka naman maghahabol ang squirrel ng mama or ba't ka naman magtatayo ng internet sa buwan? Anong gagawin? So that's one bias na actually affects our appreciation of information. Then we also have confirmation bias. Minsan naghahanap tayo ng information or kaalaman na will confirm yung kung ano na lang pinaniniwalaan natin noon pa man. And sometimes, this is very, very common during highly competitive environments or incidents like the elections. Diba? We also have the tawag natin echo chamber na tayo na nag-uusap. We all have the same biases and we tend to share and express information that backs up or confirms our biases and our judgments. Then we also have authority bias. This is very palpable sa Philippines kasi nga dun sa ating family system or how we were raised by our family we have to respect and follow authority and it has an effect dun sa tendency natin in evaluating or judging information by attributing greater accuracy at binibigyan ng mas malaking bigat o mas mabigat na appreciation yung mga opinion ng tinatawag nating authority figures or mga tao or persons of authority. Now, this all leads up to it's called information disorder. And information disorder is actually categorized by some experts or some studies into three. One is misinformation. Maling impormasyon na ipinakalat o na-share natin, example sa social media, without necessarily the intention of causing harm or ipahamak ng iba. Example, di ba before the pandemic, pag may masama ang panahon, may bagyo, may ulan, nagpapalabas ng advisory. For example, DepEd o yung local government, postponing classes because of possible baha or malakas na hangin to protect the students or learners from harm. And then may nag-share, for example, code card ng isang network sasabing walang pasok ngayong araw dahil may bagyo. But without looking into the details ng code card, na yung palang advisory na yun or code card ng news network o news organization was luma na. Pwedeng last year pa, pero na-share thinking na bago pa yun. So that's one kind of misinformation. Mali siya, kasi nga luma na siya, pero na-share without naman necessarily na they intending to harm someone. Now, the second category, ito yung lagi nating sinasabi, disinformation. Maling impormasyon na sadyang pinakalat kasi nga may plano o may intensyon na pahamak yung iba. And alam natin yan, yung eleksyon o even before pa man, disinformation against even a journalist. Red tagging, na kapag ikay critical sa government, sasabihin agad, lilabel ka na rebelde ka o IPA ka. Or kung parang na lang, ma-discredit ka. mas malala itong third category. Ito yung malinformation. Kasi nga, correct information na deliberately o sinasadyang ipakalat with the intention to cause harm. One example, sex videos or compromising photos. Si boyfriend, si girlfriend, nakipag-break kay boyfriend. Ngayon, nagalit si boyfriend. Na-insulto siya kasi naghiwalay sila ni girlfriend. So, it so happened na meron pala silang sex videos and photos. Ipinakalat ni boyfriend. Nilaglag niya sa social media para makapaghiganti kay girlfriend for breaking up with him. So yan, malinformation. Totoo yung videos, totoo yung photos, pero pinakalat to embarrass or compromise or harm another party or person. So, kung titingnan natin in a Venn diagram, ito yung parang structure ng disinformation or information ang problema natin sa information nowadays. Misinformation is more about falseness. Maling informasyon talaga, pero wala naman siyang intent to harm. Disinformation is an intersection of the two factors. Falseness, kamalian, at saka yung intent to harm, yung gusto mong pahamak ng iba. Pero mas mabigat yung malinformation kasi talaga ang purpose nito is to harm someone. Talagang planong gamitin yung informasyon and most of the times ito po siya to harm any person or a party or an organization maybe. Now, byword nowadays in fake news, no? But fake news doesn't even cover everything. Because most content na ginagamit sa malinformation, yun nga, is not even fake. Often, mas effective yung totoo o genuine na information that are being used out of context and then weaponized o ginagamit yung some data by some people na alam nila na pag may na-twist ka lang na kwento based on a maliit lang na bagay ng katotohanan, marami agad ang maniniwala at kakalat agad yun. Again, agents of this information have learned that, ang gagamitin mo yung totoong content, totoong information, pero i-reframe mo lang siya, i-twist mo lang siya ng kaunti at i-mislead mo lang yung readers. These materials are most likely to deceive people and gain traction, particularly in social media. Now, ito, false context. Sinasabi natin false context o maling pagkakaunawa dun sa informasyon. For example, itong picture na nakita nyo, bata na parang nasa loob ng hawla or cage or maybe detention center. Totoo yan actually. That's very true. Pero pinapalabas dito sa caption this is what happens when the government believes people are illegal. Kids in cages. So, yung nagsulat nito, nag-post nito on social media, pinapalabas niya na may batang kinulong kasi nga illegal siya or illegal immigrant siya. Pero actually, if you check the photo, if you research, totoo nga, yes, may ganyang bata nasa loob ng cage o aula. Pero actually, the kid was not detained because he is an illegal immigrant. But it is a protest dramatization ng mga protesters against immigration policies of one nation. So, ganyan. Konting lang twist sa caption, iba na agad ang pagkakaintindi natin. Sa isang material na totoo nga, but nabibigyan o nagkakaroon ng ibang pagkakaunawa o meaning dahil lang sa simpleng caption na ginawa o nilagay o sinilok nung nag-post ng photo na ito sa social media. Then, impostor content. Merong mga agents of disinformation na gumagamit ng logos ng reputable news organization. For example, dito sa pictures, upper left, breaking news, code card o graphics. Actually, very familiar. It's like that of BBC. Pero yung content niya, misleading. Pero kung ikaw pamilyar sa BBC at hindi mo agad nababasa agad yung content, hindi mo na-verify, maniniwala ka at a tendency, isi-share mo na may magkakaroon daw ng eleksyon doon sa UK. When in fact, ang naglagay niyan ay impostor or nagpupunwari ng taga-BBC. Then, meron ding, websites na kunwari, local media outfits or organizations. Ganda ng mga graphics nila, no? Tsaka yung mga slogans. Pero, when you check the background ng mga websites na ito, they're actually controlled or ran by Republican consultants. Sa US kasi na yung mga major political parties din. They have consultants, they have lobbyists, they even have political action committees who are actively participating in the elections and campaigns. And they usually use websites to spread propaganda that favor their party or maybe go against or say against or criticize the other party. Now, ito pa, manipulated content. Ito, sa upper left of picture, makikita nyo parang may isang police doon. I think this is an immigration agent. May hinuhuling mama habang yung ibang tao nakapila in a voting precinct. Tulad dun sa atin, Lunes, sa election natin. So, nakakita mo, maniwala ka talaga na ang police may hinuhuling mama habang nag-aantay siya dun sa voting area or voting center. May in fact, manipulated content ito, dalawang pictures na pinagsama to make it appear na yun nga, yung police may hinuhuli. Because dalawang pictures yan, yung dito sa baba, sa kaliwa, yes, may pumipila, may voting center, may mga tao nakapila. Ito naman sa kanan, separate picture ng police na may hinuhuling mama. Pero actually, manipulated ito, pinagsama, para to make it appear na yun, yung police may hinuhuling butante. Pero both pictures are totoo, manipulated lang to create another impression or presentation of whatever that the person who posted this material on social media wants to make it appear. Now, let's place a bit of a game. Paano nga ba how is an agent of disinformation born? Paano ba develop yung yung kaisipan niya sa pagkakalat ng maling informasyon o disinformation o malinformation. So, kunwari ako, gusto ko magiging disinformation and fake news tycoon. Kasi nga, yung ibang influencers, ang laki ng kita pag, they engage in spreading disinformation. So, for example, I'll start with a bit of my frustration against government or an institution. Lahat naman tayo, di ba? Pupunta tayo sa Twitter. Mag-express tayo ng ating frustrations, maybe against government or someone. So, Twitter would be a very effective platform. And one guy who got banned for Twitter for doing that. So, magpo-post ako sa Twitter. This government is a complete and utter failure. #resign, losers. So, tweet ko yan. And then, pero kung ako lang, abay, hindi naman ako makakakuha ng attraction o ng traction sa social media. Hindi naman dadami yung followers ko dito. Upper left, the number of followers ko pala is 8. When I posted that rant against the government. So 8 pa lang ang followers ko. Kailangan kong erase yung credibility ko to get more influence. Ano gagawin ko? Because nga, constructive criticism, hindi enough yun to get more followers. And more followers means more influence. So, anong gagawin natin? We can start by borrowing or pepeke natin yung credibility ng iba. Hinihiram natin yung credibility ng mga laking tao, mga sikat na tao. For example, ito, Joe Biden, the current president of the United States. Nanakawin ko yung picture niya, download ako. Gagawin yung profile picture ko. Lagyan ko ng Joe Biden, 46th President of the United States of America. And magpo-post ako. As your president, I have issued an executive order to rename Canada to North Dakota. You got annexed. Parang kung ikaw hindi ka medyo mabusisi, maniniwala ka na na-annex na ni Joe Biden yung Canada sa US, katulad nung ginagawa ngayon ng Russia sa Ukraine, and then you rename Canada into North Dakota. So, sensational, ano? Kung hindi ka masuri. Abay, may iba dyan magwo-worry. And kung makikita nyo, babalik natin, yung spelling ng pangalan na Joe Biden, yung N niya is N-E. Then yung sa president, yung E is a little strange. Different kind of E. The same dun sa letter U ng United, and even dun sa letter C ng America. So obvious na parang talagang hiniram o pineke lang yung account na ito. This is a fake account. So, kita mo, biglang dumami, may 39 followers na agad tayo. Just because of that one Joe Biden post. And people are reacting. Some are, getting their attention dahil nga dun sa post mo na parang pinapalabas na annex mo na yung Canada sa US. So may mag-react dyan. Isang Twitter user. Seryoso ba si Biden? Or nabuang na ba siya? So mag-hashtag siya, leave Canada alone. But of course, meron din namang masisiyahan dun. Yeah, it's awesome. We need this. So you will use ang user na yun will also use yung hashtag you got annexed at magba-viral na yan. Magti-trending na yun yung hashtag na yan, you got annexed. Now, let's move on. So, anong feeling? Maybe you might have moral objections or parang ang ganda kasi nga 61 followers na tayo sa taas. So, 61 followers na, lumalaki na yung followers. Meaning, you're getting, as you get more followers, you're getting influential. But hindi viable yung lagi ka na lang mamimeke ng account ng iba. Kung magpe-pretend ka na si ganito ka, si ganyan. So anong gagawin natin? Abay, pwede nating sigurong gumawa tayo ng fake news website. For example, the Cosmos Post covers everything. Yan yung gagawin natin. Tatayo tayo ng fake news website or alternative news organization. And ano kaya ang magiging job title natin doon? For example, ako, siguro, magiging editor-in-chief ako o publisher. But kailangan natin ng slogan to catch more attention. So gagawin natin na maglalagay tayo ng slogan, the Cosmos Post, bursting the mainstream media bubble. Ayun, ang labas, alternative na news source ka dun sa mga nakagawian na natin o tawag natin mainstream news organization. Now, ito na ngayon yung the Cosmos Post or TCP is now the basis of our fake news empire. So ganyan lang yan. It all starts with a rant against government. Then some will have the tendency to fake accounts, maybe on their own volition, by their own volition, or maybe they get hired to spread disinformation. Ayun, so from a near social media user, and kita nyo, ang followers niya, 124, biglang lumobo. Ngayon, tayo ay editor-in-chief na ng isang news site na actually ang laman lang naman lahat ay puro peke o maling informasyon. Now, ayon sa Global Disinformation Order na pag-aaral ng Oxford 2019, may mga pruweba na o evidence na ng organized social media manipulation campaigns in 70 countries. Mas marami pa ito noong 2018 na 48 and 28 in 2017. And ang mas masama pa dito is co-opted na ang social media ng mga authoritarian regimes. Nagagamit na yung social media. Dati sabi natin social media is an effective tool against oppression, authoritarian regimes. But these guys actually are now very much adept in using social media to their advantage. So there are three distinct ways in using social media as a tool of information control. Suppress fundamental human rights, discredit political opponents, and even drown out dissent. And Facebook is still the top choice for social media manipulation. Now, anong consequences ng information disorder? Number one, erosion of trust in journalism and journalists. And I can only imagine our situation when this election is over and done with. Yung mga agents of disinformation, magsasaya yan. Oh, wala nang naniniwala sa mainstream media. Kami pinaniwalaan ng 31 million. Then there's loss of distinction between truth and lies. Nabablur na yung lines. Mag-aagam-agam na yung mga tao. They'll be confused. They don't know what to do anymore kung may information silang nakikita. Then it also undermines the importance of press freedom and freedom of expression. Kasi nga, pag wala ng trust, wala ng tiwala yung tao sa media, abay, sasabihin nila, ugok ka pala eh. Sumpong kita. Puro mali pinagsasabi mo. Hindi naman totoo. And then of course, malicious targeting of critics. Kasi nga, pay for all, maraming naniniwala sa disinformation. So yung mga talagang nagtatrabaho kung become targets of malicious actuations or even physically harmful actions. Disinformation is nothing new. Simula pa man, nandyan na yan, even before the advent of technology. But technology only hastened, pinabilis niya yung pagkalat, and yung mga elections, at yung mga crises like the pandemic, were actually weaponized to clamp down on dissent, while yung mga state-sponsored disinformation and trolls, yumayabong, dumadami sila because of this age of disinformation na i-encounter mo. Now, for example, ito 1938 pa ito way before Photoshop was invented. Joseph Stalin, dating diktador o leader ng USSR, which is now Russia, ginamit niya yung photo manipulation to rewrite history. And he actually applied that to his former head ng kanyang secret police. Pinapatay niya, pero hindi siya tumigil doon. Pati yung memories nitong si Nikolai Yashov, binura niya. And he did that literally by airbrushing si Yashov doon sa mga pictures kung saan magkasama sila. So this information has always been around, even before. Now, we go to fact-checking one to one. Pag may na-encounter tayong information sa website o may na-encounter tayong websites na purportedly sources of news, we can do the following. You can check the URL, yung address ng website mismo. You can do vertical or lateral reading, meaning babasahin mo yung buong website, kung anong content mo. Then, lateral reading refers to, i-verify mo yung information sa loob ng website niyan, nandun din sa ibang reputable news sources o websites. Ikukumpara mo. Then you can also use search operators and reverse image searches. Ito naman sa mga pictures naman mo. Then if you still want to verify yung source picture, you can use the metadata. You can check the metadata of the photos. And you can also follow fact-checking websites para verify yung mga information na nakikita natin sa social media. Now, how to check your URL? You can use one tool. Look up .icon.org. So you just, dun sa search bar, you can just put the URL or yung address ng website and it will come up with some information on a particular website kung genuine siya. For example, CNN. Search natin CNN.org. And lalabas yung contact information. You have to register kung sino yung pa-register mo. The organization that owns the portal, first contact details, etc. So, nakalagay dyan, naka-indicate talaga dyan. But what if we search for cnn.com.net.ph? Ilalabas ba? So, makikita sa baba, no registry RDAP server was identified for this domain. Attempting look up using his service. So, meaning, hindi siya naka-register, it's not an authentic website, and kung meron man ganyan, baka hindi siya yung tunay na CNN, na Cable News Network Organization. Now, we can also use Google search operator if we want to verify information that we come across. But, we have to be more mabusisi kapag gamit ng mga search operators nito. For example, Google. Pag ginugol mo lang Rodrigo Duterte, you'll get 10,200,000 results. Ang dami yan, bigat yan. And mahirap ma-filter yan except kung may filtering ng Google, but sa dami-dami ng results na yan, mabibigatan kang mag-verify ng information. So kung mag-search ka naman, Rodrigo Duterte o Sara Duterte, so lalabas din Sara Duterte lang lahat, then you have like 2,210,000 results pa. Ang dami pa din yun, mabigat pa rin. And it's all about Sara Duterte's profile. What if we use search sa Rodrigo Duterte and Sara Duterte? Basta yan yung mga news pertaining to Sara Duterte, her pronouncement on some issues, etc. etc. But almost 1 million pa rin yung results. 834,000 yan. Oh, how do we sift through such information? So, mahirap. If we narrow down or specify our search na Rodrigo Duterte killed them all, so lalabas yan statements ni Duterte, kung pumatay ng rebelde, drug addict, and even repeated that statement days ago, nga gusto niya pong makapatay ng mga drug lords before siya bumaba sa pwesto. So you'll get like 12,800 results. Dami pa din yan. Then we can also narrow down dun sa file type, Rodrigo Duterte, file type, PDF. So mostly, pag ganyan ang keywords na gagamitin natin, we will be given or provided with PDF files or studies pertaining to Rodrigo Duterte. Which it helps to narrow down our searches kung saan talaga natin ma-verify yung mga information na nakikita natin sa internet. Ito, this picture. Pinalabas na parang quote card or graphic card ng CNN. May isang hospital daw na lockdown kasi nga yung isang COVID patient na tinurukan ng bakuna, naging zombie. Pinagkakagat, pinagkakain yung ibang pasyente sa loob ng hospital. Parang totoo, no? May CNN logo pa, etc. etc. Pero actually, this picture was actually way back in 2019 pa, way before the pandemic erupted. And this is a photo ng trauma bay, ng isang emergency department ng Temple University Hospital sa Midya. And this was featured by the New York Times. Pero with a bit of manipulation, lagyan mo na ng logo, etc. etc. Parang makukunik mo na dun sa mga zombies dahil sa COVID-19. Here's another one. May mass graves daw. Yung mga COVID-19 fatalities in one place. Parang totoo, napakalumi pa. But if you use the Google image search search engine, lalagay mo ng image dyan, then it will verify, it will trace kung saan galing yung picture na yun, original material mo, source. Lalabas, this picture was actually a scene from the movie Contagion, way back in 2011 pa. And of course, Contagion actually delved into a pandemic na rin, a viral pandemic. Pero kung ikakat mo yung portion ng movie, papalabas mo na ito, mass grave ng mga COVID fatalities in some place at hindi ka mamusisi, talagang maluloko ka. Ito, this photo is very familiar, particularly in Asian countries. May lanterns, then may puno, may snow. Obviously, may malamig ng lugar kasi naka-coat, naka-jacket yung mama na naglalakad. So, but how do we verify source at sino ang may-ari ng picture mo to at kailan kinuha to at saan kinunan. So you can use metadata2go.com para ma-check mo yung metadata, yung parang yung biodata mismo ng picture mo. Lalagay mo rin dyan just like yung sa Google image search. So you will get the information. Service identifier, ito yung pag-aari ng AFP, data sent, that was in 2022, etc. etc. The object name is China Weather Snow. Then yung caption o abstract, itong makikita na itong picture na ito was taken in Beijing, China on January 20, 2022 by Jade Gao of Agence France Press. Ito pa, during the kick-off of the campaign earlier this year, may pinalabas na parang image sa Facebook. At ang pinapalabas ng ng picture na ito yung isang kandidato daw was able to gather the biggest crowd to attend yung kanyang campaign kick-off sa may dito sa isang Philippine Arena. Pero if you check na itong picture na ito was actually a portion of an old video. Time pa ito ni 2014. Time pa ito ni President Pinoy or Noynoy Aquino. It was actually a part of ng isang video during the inauguration ng Philippine Arena, which was also attended by President Noynoy Aquino. Ngayon, siguro, na-splice yung video, ginawang photo, image, tapos pinalabas na. Ito yung crowd sa campaign kick-off ni candidate blah blah blah. At may caption pa, nakakapamilip balahibo, etc. In fact, manipulated or repurposed to deceive itong ginawang graphic image na ito na na-post I think sa TikTok. So, you can still use or seek help or consult fact-checking websites kung duda kayo sa mga information na nakikita nyo. You can also ask for their help to verify everything and anything that you encounter on the internet. So we have verifiers, you can check PH. Then we are also involved sa Daily Guardian with Facts First PH, doing fact-checking and even translating some materials para ma-disseminate as widely as possible. Then you can also use investigation tools. If you want to do fact-checking by yourselves, you can use some investigation tools. Open source ito, libre, walang bayad. Just like the ones offered by awesomessentials.com. Marami siyang tools for online verification, digital journalism, and open source intelligence work. So some of their tools are for Facebook, Maps, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, or even back search or image searches. Now, we're all entitled to our opinion, karapatan naman natin, but we cannot really, not to our own facts, because pag manipulated or invented, doon tayo magkakagulo. We will cause confusion and, and even journalism is naapektuhan because sa problema natin sa disinformation. Well, my presentation ends here and I hope na gising pa tayong lahat and magandang hapon po sa lahat.
Thank you, Francis. And yes, sana gising pa po yung ating mga estudyante who are still with us today. Kung may questions kayo regarding Francis' presentation, again, please drop them sa ating chat box so we can ask Francis. Francis, siguro gusto lang natin i-clarify, at itong mga tools na to, you don't even have to register or pay anything to use them, right?
Yeah, open source po naman lahat yan. Lalo na yung sa Google. At saka yung Awesome Essentials, kasi nga specialized tools yun. For Facebook, Instagram. So, I actually learned that in one of the fact-checking seminars na I attended before. And maganda siya actually, lalo na pag medyo komplikado yung fact-checking mo. You're looking for pictures rally in a place. Gusto mo mag-verify if this is the real place. Nangyari ba talaga yan? Dun, may mga tools tayong that are very helpful dun sa fact-checking efforts na.
In this recent campaign, I remember there was this one photo na parang they made it appear that they were bikers for Marcos. Tapos na kinak-check yung photo, they looked at the metadata, they did a reverse search. Nakita nila na it was, I think in Indonesia or Malaysia.
Yeah, hindi sa
Pilipinas. Yung photo
Pilipinas.
na yun several years ago. Yeah, not in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So yung mga
Metadata
ganang
lang
bagay,
yun.
very important sa atin, Of course, journalists have been doing fact-checking for the longest time. We just don't call it like that. Ang tinuro lang sa atin sa klase kung umuulan, buksan mo yung bintana mo at tingnan mo kung talagang umuulan ba o umaaraw. But there was actually a more sophisticated phrase that was used before. I don't remember this. If your mother says, I love you, or if your mother says she loves you, check it out. So parang kahit sa nanay mo, huwag kang maniwala ng 100%. You have to check it first. You have to verify. But then again, ang pinaka-importante nga sinabi ni Francis is what you can verify, what you can fact check is factual information. Pag opinion, wala tayong magawa. Respect my opinion talaga yon. But if ang opinion niya ay may laman na data, laman na information na pwedeng i-verify, then we can always fact check. At hindi
Problema kasi sa ibang opinion makers, they actually take things out of context or nililink nila yung information to some other situations. To make it more believable, kaya nga yung confirmation bias yung tinatawag ko. Kahit nga pro Bongbong, pro Lenny, marami akong nakikita taken out of context na information.
Yes. Tapos yung isa pa siguro, always reminder natin, even to our students, alam niyo, napaka-importanting matutunan talaga yung ganitong klaseng media and information literacy saka pagpa-fact check. In fact, kung college natin to itinuturo, medyo late na yon. Dapat elementary or high school, meron ng version nila yung fact checking. Kasi the moment someone is able to access the internet, then that person also becomes susceptible to disinformation and misinformation. Pero i-contextualize din natin sa Pilipinas, we're very Asian in the sense that we're very polite. We're not very confrontational. Diba ngayon lang naman nauso yung bardagulan yata na talaga, dahil sobra-sobra na, But nonetheless, the point I'm making is that when you fact check, you try to avoid na para bang condescending or mayabang sa parte natin. That's not our aim. Our aim is to create a community of fact lovers, proper spelling, of fact lovers and fact checkers. And you can only do that if you encourage people to, appreciate verified information, to appreciate doing the fact checking themselves. Kaya kung napansin niyo, the way Francis's session was crafted, hindi niya sinasabi sa inyo kung ano ang totoo at mali. He's telling you, ito ang tools, gamitin ninyo, these are free to use, gamitin niyo yung sarili ninyong pangunawa at pag-iisip para ma-determine kung ano ang tama at mali na information.
But before this, actually, I had also a online talk with a group of journalism students in one of the universities here in Iloilo. And they also asked this question, sir, is it too late na ba to those trainings on media literacy sa amin sa college? What about dun sa mga K-12 students na senior high? I don't know, ang strand on that particular thing, nagpapatuloy pa yan. And what kind of materials are they using? What are the topics? Hindi ko nakikita, I don't know. But maybe, college students, particularly sa journalism, they can do outreach na parang extension. Not necessarily dun sa loob ng classroom, but you can make them tipon-tipon, then you can do discussions like this, particularly on media literacy and fact-checking. Kasi nga, dun sa mga bata talaga eh. Kasi nga, impressionable pang mga yan. So whatever they encounter in the internet, madali silang maniniwala without bothering you.
Yeah. Tingin ko, Francis, malaki ang potential ng campus journalism.
Yes.
Lalo yung mga lumalaban sa NSPC, di ba? Dapat doon meron ng, siguro may separate item na siguro dapat for fact-checking sa NSPC. In other countries, like in Malaysia, for example, they teach it through games like what we did earlier to make them understand how this information works. So yung games kasi, you can teach that as early as elementary. Diba? Para lang matutunan nila na this is what you need to do kapag meron kang ganitong information, you need to create that culture. So sana sa atin din, we've been pushing for that. Every time meron kaming ganito like scholastics, tapos alam namin na may elementary or high school counterpart yung eskwelahan, we ask talaga the academe na, look at this as something na dapat kasama sa curriculum as early as elementary. Dapat kasama siya talaga. May questions ba kayo? Or gutom na ba kayo? As a bit of trivia, yung reverse search sa Google sa image, That was actually triggered by Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez nga ba o Beyonce?
Yeah,
I think
Jennifer Lopez.
J-Lo, yeah. So si J-Lo was wearing a Versace dress. Wala pa noon na Google reverse search. Parang people took photos of her dress and they were asking Google kaninong damit ba ito? Who was the designer? And Google, of course, had no answer because wala pa ganong mechanism. So na-realize nila na pwede palang may market pala no, for Google reverse search. Thank you, J-Lo, for that life-changing contribution sa Google. Okay, kung wala na kayong tanong, last call na to. Kung wala na talaga, then I would thank Francis for taking the time to join us today. Maraming salamat sa pag-handle ng ating mini workshop. Actually, I'm supposed to call Ariel, but I think he's now preparing for his trip to Sweden. So thank you to all of our speakers, from Prof. Ipe, to Rides, to Weng, to Francis. And thank you also to the Hans Seidel Foundation for supporting us. I'd like to ask our participants to please complete the survey form na andyan po sa chat box ninyo, so you can get your certificate of attendance dito sa forum natin. And also please like the Facebook pages of PPI and Hans Seidel Foundation. Maraming salamat sa ating trustee kanina, si John Aldrayos, for giving his remarks earlier. Sa mga taga-UST, maraming salamat po, Sir Ben. Thank you for staying on. Kay Carol, if she's still here, I can't see Carol. Wait, hold on. There you go. Kay Carol, maraming salamat. Thank you to the PPI team who made this production possible today. And yun, wala na ako nakalimutan. This is Joyce Pañares, the Seminar Director of the Philippine Press Institute. All the materials will be uploaded in our PPI website. So if you need to check the presentations, the slides, or you want to watch again, please just check the website of the PPI. And again, I invite everyone to follow the Facebook pages of HSF and PPI para malaman po ninyo yung mga upcoming events namin, at kung may mga gusto kayong samahan din sa mga events na yon, you're all most welcome to do so. So wala na ako nakalimutan at this point. Thank you so much, everyone. We close the session today. Maraming salamat.
Thank you. Bye-bye.